when the business of the House suspended 1 p.m., the Youth Parliament was debating the following resolution. Whereas the Bahamas gained its independence on July 10, 1973, and whereas on July 10, 2013, the islands of the Bahamas celebrated the 40th anniversary of its independence, and whereas the date marked the anniversary of the raising of the black, gold, and aquamarine Bahamian national flag. Now therefore be it resolved that the Bahamas, while acknowledging the significant strides towards youth development over the past 40 years, recognizes that there is much work to be done through the implementation and enactment of a national youth policy for the Bahamas as the government's legally binding commitment towards youth development. That the Bahamas must recognize young people as its greatest human asset and engage them in meaningful ways at all levels of the decision-making process and protect their contribution to the implementation of legislation for a National Youth Commission, a National Youth Development Trust, a National Center for Youth Development, and that the historic contributions of our national heroes be incorporated into our education system, the implementation of a mandatory national Bahamian civics curriculum, so as to make certain that the history of great Bahamian heroes and the functions of our government are never forgotten or become unknown to the next generation. As many, the chair recognizes the honorable member of Garden Hills.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to represent the humble people of Garden Hills and thank them for this prestigious opportunity to speak in this great house. It has been broadcasted on the news and newspapers that a great amount of our youth are not in stride, are not productive, Mr. Speaker. They lack a dream. They lack a primary goal. They are currently entrapped in a box in which their minds are programmed to think in a mediocre way. The question at hand today is why? Two leading and most significant reasons are: one, our current failing educational system, and two, our lack of community involvement. According to Blueprint Bahamas, for too long, our educational system has produced too many functionally illiterate Bahamians, and that this is setting the stage for challenges both now and in the future. The biggest problem, they say, is social promotion. This is the practice of promoting or advancing a student to the next grade level at the end of the school year, regardless of when or whether they've learned a thing at all. How can we promote, or dare I say advance, a child to the next level of their education if their minds haven't advanced as well? It is preposterous to think that keeping a child in their age group can somehow advance them in life. It is like rewarding them for nothing. They are then put in a mindset whereas it doesn't matter if I try or not. It doesn't matter if I work or not. It doesn't matter if I care or not. Because at the end of the year, I'm moving on. Hence, goals are forgotten, dreams are dead, and the last hope of our future then withers. Mr. Speaker, this is a recipe that resurrects for something known as a plantation mentality. Plantation mentality is a term used to describe people who hold themselves back, socially and or economically, as though they are still down on the plantation. In our educational system, we are trained only to be waiters, busboys, laundress, maids, etc. Mind you, these are not bad jobs. However, this is breeding another generation of servants. Why do we put our dream cars, figuratively speaking, in park? Why do we long to work at that modern-day plantation over the bridge? Why? When we have so much more potential. The solution, Mr. Speaker? One, banish the dreadful practice of social promotion. And two, create a curriculum tailored to leadership and not servitude. For example, make the elective of business studies a mandatory course. Teach children not only to be chefs, but to own their own restaurants. Teach children more about information technology. We are living in a technological age. However, we seldom have any young people aspiring to pursue careers in computer programming or web developing. In fact, seldom know that these careers even exist. According to the National Youth Policy Summary 2013-2018, in which I strongly support, it states that the foremost goal of this youth policy is to provide an appropriate framework for the Ministry of Youth, stakeholders, partners, and benefactors of youth development in the Bahamas that will coalesce efforts to improve education, health, and the quality of life for young Bahamians. Education is the key to our future. If it is not improved, that door will forever remain locked. We, the youth, are the future. In order to build a bridge to our literal future, we must first build our own hotels. We must build our own companies. We must build our dreams. Which brings me to my second point, community involvement. We only spend 7 hours roughly per day under school circumstances. What happens after school? What happens when school closes? This is where the community comes in. Take the 300 Connect program mentioned by the member of St. Anne's, for example. This program wonderfully allows the facilitation of youth from all over the country to be involved in youth organizations. I'd like to see more money being placed into this and more programs like this so that we can be able to extend our reach well beyond where it is today. Mr. Speaker, when you walk out into the Kemp Road area or the Baintown area, you can see countless youth walking the sidelines of the streets. Mr. Speaker, there is no reason for these children to be on the streets when in actuality, there are so many different organizations they can be a part of. Mr. Speaker, no, we cannot control or manipulate their minds to join these various clubs. Mr. Speaker, my speech is a little unconventional. However, I call on the priests, the pastors, and clergy to begin to make the church more relevant, to begin to put in place programs that can actually answer the needs of young people. Mr. Speaker, as a young individual and from statistics taken from my peers, it shows that children, especially those at-risk children, do not want to join these organizations. Why? Because in churches in general, they are more often talked about and seldom talked with. I call on motivational beings in our nation to not cater to, but to push, to steer our troubled youth into the right direction, to believe in us, to invest in us, the future. How can you build a bridge to the future without the future? We are the future leaders, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, it is imperative that we, the youth of now, as Gandhi said, become the change that we want to see. Hence, change must not come tomorrow, but now. And finally, I would like to end in a quote, Mr. Speaker. In the words of Albert Einstein, the world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot change without us first changing our thinking. Meaning that if the educational system is not reformed and our train of thought is not changed, our nation can never change or progress. Hence, as many blocks as we may lay down to complete this bridge, we will never make it to the successful future that we want.
Honorable Member for Garden Hill, as much as I would like you to finish that speech, the business of this House must continue. Thank you very much for your contribution. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Carmichael.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the prominent people of Carmichael, expressing gratitude towards them for allowing me the ability to sit in this House. Mr. Speaker, in the astute words of the late father of our nation, Sir Lyndon Pinlin, I've come to agree holistically with his terms, in which I quote, "Young people can and should be seen as powerful agents for national development and social change. And as agents of social changes, they are a most valued national asset." Sir Lyndon Pinlin understood the importance of the young people. We, the youth of this country, should be top priority and not deprived of opportunities and socially disadvantaged. Mr. Speaker, I am dismayed with the amount of issues that the youth of the Bahamas suffer and it is about time that we implement changes. My foremost concern is the inadequate amount of opportunities that we have. Our youth do not have an initiative that directs us into an unambiguous path, with the intention of helping us to achieve our goals and aspirations expeditiously. However, the government's course of help towards a variety of choices is not sufficient. Hence, the youth today are bluntly distressed with not being able to have a myriad of choices, inclusive of those within the Family Islands. Unfortunately, the youth that inhabit the Family Islands are normally restricted to a low standard of living and are not giving the benefit of the doubt. They don't have an equal amount of opportunity as they should, and they ought to, because they are Bahamians as well. My solution is that we establish a student union, Mr. Speaker. It has to be a union that expresses the needs and aspirations of its members to pertinent people who can guide them effectively. For example, amalgamations like the National Union of Students, which the United Kingdom has in effect. This union will be able to develop the youth's thoughts and direct them assertively towards their visions, dreams, and goals. However, this union will only cover students. So, Mr. Speaker, the Youth Advisory Council of the Bahamas needs to become more utilized to aid the government in the decisions of directing us appropriately. This council is known to consult and give advice on the issues that affect Bahamian youth, and this is what we need for change to be made. However, the next apprehension of mine is various youths from the islands being socially deprived in terms of not being balanced. The majority of the island youth are on top of their classes academically, but do not have the advantage to stand up and say, hey, let's go to the movies tonight, or I'm going to celebrate my achievements by bowling. The social development must be established within the islands so that the young people can be balanced by positive means. Mr. Speaker, I've taken a poll throughout my constituency, and 100% have agreed that youth that lead to sparing lives becomes lost. Will you want the future leaders to be lost? Will you want them to be socially incompatible? I don't think so. Mr. Speaker, despite these adverse points, I do have a solution. A national youth initiative should be promoted that involves all inhabited islands to allow accordance between both the islanders and the city youth. Clubs like the Governor General Youth Award and the Junior Achievement Programs can be promoted. Both clubs allows you to break out of isolation and embraces you with a self-confidence, bonding relationships, and a connection to society. If the young people receive the help that they need to execute their visions and goals, then they can help build the bridge to the future along with the young people from Nassau. Together, the youth of this nation can lucratively continue the journey of making immeasurable amounts of changes without division amongst themselves. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, I humbly suggest that we, the young people, can become balanced by way of us having a national youth policy in place. Due to the policy being enforced, the young people, present and future governments, can acknowledge all, again I say all issues and conditions that the youth are faced with daily and ways that such issues can be resolved. Mr. Speaker, it is a tremendous need of this policy to be exposed to every young person for them to have the opportunity to be involved in this program that will assist them to live out their positive dreams and goals as proud Bahamian citizens. Mr. Speaker, quite possibly, because of the policy not being as yet enforced, based on Department of Statistics, 60% of young people under 35 are not involved. They are discouraged and tired of empty promises. We want a policy, Mr. Speaker, that protects us. We need a policy that has our best interests at heart. We require this policy because we are burdened and now clouded by the tears we share within and outside. Mr. Speaker, we necessitate writing, not word of mouth. We are tired of the same issues regurgitating themselves. Otherwise, our fellow Bahamians and worldwide may see us as being ancient people. As the representative of Carmichael, Mr. Speaker, I further express that we, the young individuals, do not just want to be listened to, but take action and make us your main concern. Take on the leadership mentality of the late predecessor, Celine Pinlin, who believed in making us the youth of the Bahamas known as the agents of change. We want this policy now. We need it now. Let us have the national youth policy now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Carmichael, thank you for your contribution. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Andres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise with great confidence and conviction as I stand in this great house and represent the even greater constituency of South Andres and Mangrove Key. Mr. Speaker, this is the Bahamas, miles of gorgeous white sand beaches. This is the Bahamas, home of the Nassau grouper and the spiny lobster. This is the Bahamas, rich in biodiversity. This is the Bahamas, home of the world's third largest barrier reef. This is the Bahamas, paradise on earth. Let's cut the chit-chat, Mr. Speaker, and get straight down to business. A famous writer by the name of Khalil Gibran once stated, and I quote, "Progress lies not in enhancing what is, but in advancing towards what will be," end quote. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas is still in the process of developing. Thus, there are many pressing issues that need to be dealt with. In the Bahamas, crime is spiraling out of control. Youths have lost pride and respect for themselves and for others, and the unemployment rate is simply depressing. Mr. Speaker, although I would like to, I cannot address all of these aspects of the Bahamas. But, Mr. Speaker, there is one key issue in the national youth policy that touches the core, that touches me to the core, the environmental and agricultural sector. There was a time when it seemed that agriculture was destined to become a major contributor to the Bahamian economy. During the 1800s, pineapple and citrus production became a major source of foreign revenue for the Bahamas. Farming in Eleuthera, Andres, Exuma, and Kell Island was very prominent, and business was booming. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, that apart from substance production, agriculture in the Bahamas is non-existent. And that is why our import food bill is $500 million. If this isn't depressing, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what is. Mr. Speaker, issues affecting the growth and development of agriculture in the Bahamas are limited freshwater, land classification, land ownership, soil type, climate change, infrastructure, technical capacity, legislation, immigration, markets, diseases, parasites, international trade agreements, funding, diagnostic capacity, foreign relations, planning, and food security. So, Mr. Speaker, the question is, how do we overcome these challenges and make the agricultural industry come alive? Can we implement new marketing strategies? Can we integrate agricultural science in grades 1 through 12 curriculum? Can we encourage and establish agricultural cooperatives? Yes, we can, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we can. How are we going to do this, you may ask? Let me tell you, Mr. Speaker. By formulating a national land use policy. Once farmers are given legal status for the land, the title can be used as collateral for investment. To encourage investment and grow in the agricultural industry, tax exemptions can be granted to farmers who import agricultural equipment and materials. We can also establish a modernized biotech and soil analyst labs and conduct continuous research and development in the agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, international agreements can also be made. These agreements will increase international trade relations and create new market opportunities for our producers. New strategies that can be implemented will provide reliable storage for transportation for produce. Mr. Speaker, reliable extension services will be provided for farmers. We can also subsidize planting materials and fertilizers to create more competitiveness for our farmers on a regional and international market. Baby chicks will be made more accessible for farmers if we establish a domestic poultry factory. Mr. Speaker, we can make it possible for agricultural science to be written at the BJC and BGCSE levels to increase the awareness and appreciation of agriculture and to prepare students for our proposed agriculture school. Mr. Speaker, it can be possible for the Bahamas to transition from porthole farming to commercial greenhouse farming and hydroponics farming, thus increasing productivity, water management, and reduce pests, disease, climatic changes, and eradicate seasonal agriculture through the use of these modernized farming systems. Mr. Speaker, the future for the Bahamas is indeed bright, but we cannot achieve this bright future if we do not work for it, Mr. Speaker. I therefore urge you young people not to take local food production lightly. We need to make a plan now while we have the time and resources. The current population is approximately 350,000. If we cannot feed ourselves now, then how will we feed ourselves by 2050? A plan must be implemented. For as I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, progress lies not in enhancing what is, but in advancing towards what will be. Can we make the agricultural industry comparable to the tourism industry? Yes, we can. We can develop our agricultural sector to feed ourselves and cut our import food bill by more than 50%. Let me reiterate, Mr. Speaker. We can cut our import food bill by more than 50%.
You may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I think that what the Honorable Member for South Andrews is saying is totally irrelevant to the resolution. I ask that through you that she explain that how is horticulture a part of the resolution.
You may explain.
Mr. Speaker, I do not wish to respond.
You may proceed.
Agriculture is, we can start our youth training for agriculture in school, as she was saying. This can be a part of our school curriculum. As it is, a small part in the social studies curriculum, farming is a part of it. So therefore, this is indeed relevant to education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's march on to a brighter and more productive future, Bahamaland.
Honorable Member for South Andrews. Honorable Member for South Andrews, thank you very much for your contribution to the resolution. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Michael.
I rise on behalf of the wonderful people of the great constituency of Michael, who have given me the opportunity to be their voice in Parliament and who continues to believe and invest in the youth of the nation. I join with the rest of my colleagues and Bahamians everywhere in our Bahamaland, congratulating them for the tremendous strides and accomplishments over the last 40 years. Truly, we as a people can say, look where God has brought us. He has brought us from a mighty, mighty long way. The late John F. Kennedy stated, and I quote, "Ask not what your country can do. Ask what you can do for your country." It was with the words of President John F. Kennedy in mind, like persons like the late Sir Lyndon Pinling, Sir Milo Butler, Dean Doris Johnson, Honorable A.D. Hanna, Sir Clifford Darling, Sir Arthur Folkes, Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield, Sir Randolph Folkes, and many other countless Bahamian men and women who began the journey and brought us where we are today. As we debate today, we cannot move forward without reflecting from where we came in order to know where we are headed. Mr. Speaker, allow me just for a moment to take a quick stroll down memory lane. Remember the Burma Road riot in 1942, when black Bahamians marched the Bay Street to protest the poor pay and they were getting when compared to their American counterparts? It would be remiss of me not to remind you of April 27, 1965, also known as Black Tuesday. It was the day that the late Sir Lyndon Pinling, the then leader of opposition, threw the Speaker's mace from the east window of the House of Assembly to protest the gerrymandering boundaries by the then United Bahamian Party. It was through those struggles that we as a nation came, and eventually it led to independence on July 10, 1973, a stellar accomplishment for such a small nation. When Sir Lyndon Pinling spoke to the House of Assembly in March 1972 to present the Green Paper on Independence, he said, "Only through independence will the country be able to fulfill its development ideal, completing the transition from traditional society and social and economic modernity." Those words were true then, Mr. Speaker, and they are certainly true now. Independence ushered a great change in the Bahamas. Despite the challenges that we as a nation face, we are able to accomplish so much, making us the envy in this region. It was no easy feat, but we had the courage and tenacity to fight the battle. We had the audacity to speak to our mountain, and we possessed the faith that could help you acquire any promised land. The following were some of our greatest accomplishments in an independent Bahamas. The establishment of the National Insurance Board. Schools were built so that all Bahamians, not just the elite, could obtain an education. Bahamas Air, water and sewage, empowerment of young Bahamians through small business loans, scholarship for Bahamians to attend university abroad, and BTC, just to name a few. We have sturdily moved at a rapid pace over the last 40 years, and I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that the next 40 years will be better than the first as the journey continues. According to Adrian Gibson, and I quote, "The empowerment of Bahamians of color has been an elusive dream, since so much of the majority remains economically deprived and intellectually surmised. Notably, there have also been quite a number of riveting success. However, the average Bahamian continues to struggle for a living. Some of our most glaring failures have been our failure to create a more civil society and our failure to include more youth in the decision-making of this country. I must remind this honorable House that we who sit in this place today are the future. And if the journey is to continue, it must be continued with us. Therefore, investment in youth is paramount if we seek continuity of this great voyage. I speak on behalf of the youth in the Maikal district, who are deprived of not having adequate space or sufficient teachers, whose opportunities for achievements are stifled, not because there is limited resources, but because there are only 2 students in the school at Long Bay Key, 29 students at Abrahams Bay High School, 30 at Crooked Island High School, and probably about 60 in Auckland Central High School. I remind you that we are, no matter how small, a part of the future, and it is us who will take the baton and lead this country on. As we look toward another 40 years, I wish on behalf of the good people of Maikal to thank all of our national heroes and all those unrecognized heroes who contributed so much to our development as a country. I truly believe that the potential of our independence has yet to be fully realized. And as we celebrate our 40th independence anniversary, let us, in the words of an anonymous writer, not seek the F&M answer or the PLP answer, but the right answer. Let us not fix to blame for the past, but let us accept our own responsibility for the future. And let us all move forward, upward, onward, and together in a bright new dawn and a glorious future. Long live the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
Honorable Member for Michael, thank you very much for your contribution. As many. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Port Charlotte.
If the good Lord never goes on holiday, tell me why he made the Bahamas. If the good Lord never used to come this way, tell me why he made these islands. All the sun, all the seas, all the skies, all the breeze, all the creeks, all the hills, all the sand, all the trees. Tell me why, Mr. Speaker. Tell me why he made the Bahamas. Popular words of Bahamian singing sensation, Anita Ellis. Mr. Speaker, I rise in this honorable chamber on behalf of the great people of Fort Charlotte, especially the youth, to impart my necessary contribution to this resolution. A bridge to the future, the journey continues. Mr. Speaker, 40 long years since independence marks yet another milestone in the lives of the Bahamian population. It marks 40 years of unity, strength, challenges, successes, and history as we move forward, upward, onward, and together as a great nation. Despite the many challenges and struggles we face as a society, we are determined to cross this bridge to the future as we continue the journey towards sustainable growth and prosperity within our country. This bridge to the future lies before you today, Mr. Speaker, the youth of this great nation, who are continuing the legacy that our forefathers fought long and hard for in this very same chamber. Mr. Speaker, I do believe that the youth of this country are the greatest resource we have, as we've shown our skills and dynamics, talents and abilities through sports, culture, music, and academics. We are this unyielding bridge, as together we pledge to excel for one common lofty goal. However, I believe that much more can be done to keep these young minds steadfast to building a better Bahamas for you, me, and the future generation of this land. Therefore, to ensure the continued flourishment of this country, special emphasis must be placed on the implementation of civic education. Mr. Speaker, I recall a short time ago watching a popular Bahamian television show where young persons were interviewed about our national symbols. To my amazement, many of these individuals didn't know the names to my national flower, fish, tree, bird, and to top it all off, the proper words of the national anthem. I was dazed, flabbergasted, totally astonished. It's unbelievable, unthinkable. How can we build a bridge to the future with a populace void of civic literacy? Mr. Speaker, civic education is education in self-government that is concerned with promoting the understanding, ideals of democracy, and commitment to its values and principles. Benito Mussolini notes that it's the state which educates its citizens in civic virtue, gives them a consciousness of their mission, and welds them into unity. Mr. Speaker, although there is some form of civic education in our educational system, the curriculum is old and outdated and not mandatory. Mr. Speaker, you mean after 17 years, there has not been a revised civics curriculum? Greater emphasis must be placed on an all-inclusive, revised, mandatory civic education for all Bahamian students. I believe this will accomplish several things, namely, deepen our understanding of historical, philosophical, political, social, and economic foundations of the Bahamas, promote understanding of how a constitutional government operates, and an appreciation of the rights and responsibilities of all citizens, foster a responsible commitment to the fundamental values and principles as expressed in the preamble of our Constitution, promote understanding of the essential role, the institution, and values that civil society have historically played and continue to play in building cultural identity. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, it will teach young Bahamians that the group hibiscus and poinciana are not national symbols of the Bahamas. This will undoubtedly fortify the bridge of a brighter future for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and bind us together as a unified nation. Mr. Speaker, I refer to the July 12th article in the Tribune by columnist Sharon Turner, where she states, and I quote, "A child is not born with cultural identity. He or she has to acquire it from teaching, training, and exposure. So if you show a child that the symbols of his or her nationhood do not matter, then that is how he or she will likely behave towards those symbols." End quote. Mr. Speaker, yes, we are born here, but without civic education, it will make us understand why we belong here. Mr. Speaker, I submit to this honorable chamber that civic education will help us, the future leaders of this great nation, as we develop fundamental values laid down by our founding fathers that will improve and persevere our beloved Bahama land. Let us therefore continue to build brick by brick on common care of civic culture that every individual of the Bahamas, regardless of ethnic, linguistic, religious, and social persuasions, have a role to play in the further development of this great country. To put it in Bahamian colloquialism, Mr. Speaker, let us lift up our heads to the rising sun and cross this bridge to the future, looking at where we've been and where we're going. Mr. Speaker, fellow honorable members, whether you were one who was simply the best or one who believed in the Bahamas, rest assured that when this journey begs to take its cue, always know that where it goes, this journey takes us too.
Honorable member for Port Charlotte, thank you very much for your contribution. As many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Marathon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the incredible people of Marathon constituency and thank them for this grand opportunity to sit in this honorable house. You have come, all of you, from far and near. You have come to refresh your memories about the past. You have come to examine the present, and you have come to plan the future. Mr. Speaker, fellow parliamentary colleagues, and to you, the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, good afternoon. I believe the late Sir Lyndon Tillin, when he penned those words, envisioned a Bahamas over 40 years ago, where vision through strategic planning and preparation would be used as the guide to the future. The future! What does it hold? Sometimes the best laid plans of man go astray. That happens in countries that are independent and countries that are not. And being a colony is no saving feature. But have we no faith? Mr. Speaker, since independence 40 years ago, the Bahamas has made significant strides. And as a people, we can celebrate stable democracy. We can reflect on the numerous accomplishments made in regard to national pride. When the story is told, it will be heard that we have made significant investments in our youth, as many have gone on to become outstanding contributors to nation building while achieving status across the globe. However, after 40 years, the journey continues as we are still faced with many challenges, such as antisocial behaviors, violence, and criminality amongst youth. We are still producing underachievers who don't seem to have a clear plan for the future. Pundits, politicians, clergymen, mothers, and fathers have all pointed fingers in regards to who is to blame. After 40 years of independence, the finger-pointing must stop, as it is obvious we all have failed to adequately empower, equip, engage, and establish provisions for youth employment and training as a matter of planning, preparation, and national development strategy. Mr. Speaker, we need a national commitment that provides corrective measures to fixing the problems, proactive approaches to addressing the issues, counteractive measures to finding the practical solutions to steer our youth, our future, on the path to success and achievement 40 years later. This national commitment must be seen as the bridge to the future. This bridge must be in form of a national youth policy that is committed to education and training,
empowerment, and employment. A national youth policy whose language is not paternalizing and sympathetic to young people, but one which will create a sense of ownership among the youth towards the policy. One that recognizes and defines the role of youth in not only addressing their own problems, but also the larger contribution that they can make towards the country's development. Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General, United Nations stated, failing to invest in our youth is a false economy. Conversely, investing in young people will pay great dividends for all. Mr. Speaker, these great dividends will become evident when young people, to the benefit of a national youth policy, are provided with opportunities to become skilled, healthy, and productive members of society. According to a document published by investinginyouthpolicy.com, a national youth policy provides the following benefits: makes economic sense, brings sectors together, drives priority issues, creates successful programs, supports and commits to young people, honors regional and international commitments. Mr. Speaker, we must act now in the best interest of youth development in the Bahamas. As we have recognized, there is a bridge to the future. We cannot wait another 40 years until we can cross that bridge. We must ensure today that the journey continues by equipping, empowering, and engaging in our youth through a national youth policy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Bahamas, while acknowledging the significant strides towards youth development over the past 40 years, recognizes that there is much work to be done for the implementation and enactment of a national youth policy for the Bahamas as the government's legally binding commitment towards youth development. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I say in the words of Minister Daniel Markey Johnson that the bridge is completed, but the journey continues on. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may God bless you.
Honorable Member for Marathon, thank you very much for your contribution. Now at this time, the Deputy Speaker will take the chair.
As many, the chair now recognizes the representative, the Member of Parliament from Marco City.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the proud and law-abiding people of Marco City, and I humbly thank them for this gracious opportunity to speak in this great house. Mr. Speaker, I urge you today the point I thought would make to a Bahamian citizen. Marcus Garvey once said that a people without the knowledge of past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. How can we possibly move forward? How can we possibly build a bridge to the future without knowing our roots? Mr. Speaker, without civic education, the journey will not continue. The definition of civics, according to Webster Dictionary, is a social science dealing with the rights and duties of citizens. According to the Constitution of the Bahamas, Chapter 2, Article 3, every person who is being born in the former colony of the Bahama Islands is on the 9th of July, 1973, a citizen of the United Kingdom and its colonies, but shall become a citizen of the Bahamas on the 10th of July, 1973. The absence of civic education in our school system has created an illusion on who is constitutionally and legally considered a Bahamian citizen. Unfortunately, civic education is not a mandatory subject. Therefore, students tend to stray away from it, not realizing the importance of this subject and its national development. Mr. Speaker, the civic curriculum was introduced in our school systems in the year 1996. Though outdated, the information in this curriculum still ensures that the students are taught about our government, their forms and structure, taught of tourism, our culture and heritage, but most important, the students are taught about citizenship and who we are and our duties as citizens. Mr. Speaker, there are some who are under oppression because they reside in this great country. They are considered
because they reside in this great country, they are who is considered a Bahamian citizen. They too believe they are entitled to what our forefathers fought so hard to build, a nation who was granted freedom some 40 years ago. Freedom that was only granted because of the aggressive and unyielding behavior of our nation's fathers. These freedom fighters fought the privileges that the fundamental rights of freedom of an individual, the protection to the right of life, the protection from inhumane treatment, the protection from slavery and forced labor, the protection to secure and protection of law, the protection of freedom of consciousness, the protection of freedom of expression, the protection of freedom of assembly and association, the protection of freedom of movement, the protection of freedom for discriminative and race on grounds of race, and the ability of a saving of existing law. Mr. Speaker, because civic education is absent in a lot of our school systems, the students of this generation do not know how their forefathers became citizens 40 years ago. These students will not understand what our forefathers struggled through for this young and still developing country. Mr. Speaker, to know where you're going, you must know where you came from. The future of this great nation should lie in the hearts of our youth. Mr. Speaker, by the way our youth are being raised without a foundation of civic education in their minds and in their hearts, how can we expect this generation to appreciate who they are as Bahamians? Mr. Speaker, yes, there are a few laudable youth out there who do respect their heritage, but we ask ourselves, are these few enough? Without civic education, the sound of Reagan scripts will be a lost art. And our founding fathers will eventually be our lost fathers. Mr. Speaker, we do not see the importance of civic education now. What will be our outcome? In 2008, the Ministry of Education developed a 10-year educational plan that envisions the Bahamian education system to promote the highest standards and produces students who are intellectually curious, compassionate, responsible, and capable of making a meaningful contribution to the country's productivity, prosperity, and peace. One of the goals mentioned in this plan was to develop a national pride, civic responsibility, and a strong work ethic in students. The team at this Ministry of Education who developed this plan believe that a successful nation building takes place when citizens develop a civic responsibility. Mr. Speaker, their first objective in making this happen was to revise the civic education curriculum, highlighting issues such as rights and the responsibilities of citizens, and the role of the government in a democracy, and the importance of community service. Mr. Speaker, I fear that without the inclusion of civic education in our school systems, the youth of this nation will not value this land and its culture. They will not know their rights as citizens of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. How can this generation, who knows so little about civic education, become future voters and future nation leaders? And understand, how could they not understand the way our government is formatted? Mr. Speaker, a local motivational speaker once said, in order to reach our full potential and become blooming flowers as hidden in all of us, we must first now realize and appreciate three things: who we are, where we came from, and where we plan on going. So, we as people must know and understand where we came from and the measures that got us people here. We then are responsible, once armed with knowledge, to whom we are and where we came from, to build our bridge that will lead us to our future. Thank you.
I thank you for your contribution, member for Marco City. As many, the chair recognizes the member for West Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I boldly rise on behalf of the industrious and the vivacious citizens of West Grand Bahama to orate on the matters being tabled in this honorable chamber, and I thank them for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Mr. Speaker, visualize with me an educated nation, one where its people thrive. They are first in industry and commerce, Most importantly, they are an independent nation. Yet they have no understanding or knowledge of their history and how they got there. Sadly, this could be the Bahamas very soon if we do not take affirmative action now. It is the strong belief of many that men of valor, courage, and nationhood, men of distinction and honor, men like the late Sir Rowland Simonette, Sir Harry Oakes, and Sir Kendall Isaacs should be studied. Alongside civics, we should be educating our most useful assets about our history. The students of our school system seem to be lacking the basic knowledge of their national heroes and builders. I strong-heartedly endorse the proposal of a new national Bahamas civics curriculum that will educate our nation's youth about our parliamentary procedures, our constitution, and self-governance, also informing them about the efforts made by our forefathers and others who have made an invaluable contribution to our sunny isles. The intent of this new curriculum should be to develop cultural identity and national pride while conveying the past and present struggles of a developing nation. Additionally, to educate and inform our youth about their roles in safeguarding our rich Bahamian legacy for the coming years. Mr. Speaker, it's no secret. We love being Bahamian. We love the fact that we are authentic. That is why everything we practice and consider to be customary, significant, and historic should be passed on to upcoming generations. This curriculum will be the lighthouse for those young people to read, process, and comprehend the valiant efforts made to propel our people forward. Take, for example, Black Tuesday, when Sir Lyndon Pindling and Sir Milo Butler expressed the extent of the Bahamian resilience by tossing the speaker's mace and the hourglass out of this honorable place onto the courtyard below. You see, the mace is a sign of our respect to authority, and the hourglass was meant to limit the time members had to speak on the issues. I ask you, do our students know of intricate moments in history like this? Do they know of the importance of the speaker's mace and other ceremonial instruments used in this honorable place? Stories of triumph like this should be documented and taught to our young people for them to grasp a deeper knowledge and understanding of the road that was trod many years ago, for us to stand proudly where we are now. We as young people need to know the struggles of great men who followed their dream of a sovereign nation and went after that dream with their head held high and with a vision of prosperity and fulfillment. Their tenacity and zeal is a blatant reminder of the blood, sweat, and tears associated with success. Imagine the primary school girl reading about women such as Mary Ingram and Mabel Walker fighting for the right to have a voice in a country they loved. Imagine the smile on this little girl's face as she reads and marvels over Dame Doris Johnson and goes through the voting process in her classroom with fellow classmates. This new curriculum will provide our nation's youth with the knowledge of our Bahamian identity and give them an inspiration to secure the history of this great archipelagic nation for the next generation and the generation after that. Mr. Speaker, July 10th, 2013 marked us as that steady, unshakable bridge. We as the new generation, the generation of buoyancy, and the generation of deep, critical thinkers must realize that we are the bridge. The connectors of the past pre-independence period and the future of our Commonwealth nation. Let's keep moving forward. Let's progress, and let's keep the dream of one people united in love and service aligned. I believe Langston Hughes said it best when he penned, "Hold fast to dreams, for if they die, life itself is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly." Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
As many, the chair recognizes the honorable member for North Eleuthera.
It was once said that destiny is no matter of chance. It is a matter of choice. It is not a thing to be waited for. It is a thing to be achieved. Mr. Speaker, I am in full confidence that the wise Bahamians who have elected me here tonight, who have given me the opportunity to represent them, would fully concur when I say that we as a 40-year-old country have come a long way. And we have overcome many predicaments. Even before we had overcome the British rule, we were accustomed and well-versed in making the Bahamas a better place for our citizens. We have fought and gained equal rights for the black man and the white, and experienced the Burma Road riots of 1942, the general strike of 1958, Sir Lyndon Pindling's symbolic throwing of the mace out of the window in 1965, and women's voting rights attained in 1960, and so many more forgotten battles. Mr. Speaker, it is quite distressing at best to acknowledge the fact that somewhere along the line of our greatness, we have gone askew with our children. Every generation has slipped farther and farther away from the principles and morals that have built our country, while the generation before them did nothing to reverse this downward spiral. If the forerunners of the Bahamian youth are not disciplining the heirs to their country to an acceptable standard, then we are headed nowhere. Nowhere. Mr. Speaker, we need to be better parents, better teachers, better politicians, and better leaders for our children. We need to guide them in the right direction, and we need to set the right example. Monkey see, monkey do. Our children can only be expected to do what they have seen their elders do. It is obvious that we must implement efficient programs. But the million-dollar question is, how do we do so in a realistic, manageable, and affordable manner? You see, this can't be some little lousy program that we neglect after it's implemented just to fool ourselves into believing that we did what we could. No, no, no. This initiative would have to be constantly monitored, adjusted, and upgraded. But we must start with the basics. The formation and enforcement of a national youth policy is crucial to the well-being of our future. Doing this, we would now require teams of reliable Bahamians, a new system, extra funding, and a dozen more tedious elements. After this policy is in place, programs would need to be enforced and put together. The first initiative I will present would be that of a national youth fund, which would incorporate every child's trust fund. To house such a national trust fund system, Mr. Speaker, we would now need to implement another system to regulate it. I would suggest a mandatory savings program as soon as any child is born. The parent should be automatically bound to put up money every month, let's just say a minimum of $10 a week, towards that child's trust fund until the child has graduated high school or is of legal age. Of course, the amount of money due monthly would have to be determined on the parent's financial state or income per year. So, by way of the slow accumulation of funds, this child would now be financially stable. whether the funds are used for starting college or starting your own business or whatever it may be, they are secure. Mr. Speaker, but before they get to that decision-making stage, we need to mentally and morally prepare them. The will to win is nothing without the will to prepare, said Juma Ikanga. And the daunting fact is that many parents aren't doing so well in preparing their children, and it is cause for great concern. So this is where we as a government have to step in and take charge. What both parents and children need is incentive. I'm suggesting a rewards program relating to that of the Technical Cadets program, almost similar to a constant scholarship. Children attaining a grade point average over 2.5 would receive a certain amount of money on their trust fund each year by the government. And children receiving above 3.0 grade average would receive a certain higher monetary award, and so on and so forth. We would now be rewarding the students for exactly what they've done throughout their high school years. Therefore, not only would the child's parents be adding to their trust fund, but so would the government. In the end, the child has something to work towards, and know that whatever monetary funds they receive, they deserve. Mr. Speaker, the most crucial change we need is to build our children's ethics and standards. Let's add another subject into the national curriculum, a morals and principles subject, where the children will be taught life lessons, lessons in tolerance, lessons in conflict resolutions, lessons in family life, lessons on consequences, so that they know these morals. The subject should be mandatory for 12 years, and if any child attaining less than a B grade, mandatory classes would have to be held. All Bahamian children would therefore, at the very least, have a sound moral foundation. This bold initiative would result in a paradigm shift in human behavior in the Bahamas and will commensurately affect work ethics, output, and everyday human relations. Ergo, from the first grade, we are rearing the future generations to become proud, extraordinary human beings with high morals and high standards. In educating the Bahamian youth on the importance of ethics and life skills, and enforcing laws to regulate their trust funds, we would now be preparing the next generation and welcoming a multitude of exceptional human beings into the Bahamian society. Preparation is key to a promising life. And 40 years from now, these will be the citizens who have built our bridge. These will be the people to escalate our country to an all-time level of excellence. Thank you.
Honorable Member for North Eleuthero, thank you very much for your contribution. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Angliston.
You are future. Yes, we are. You are first. Yes, we are.
Speaker, you make it different so that can be a change that will make our country like none before. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the vibrant, skilled, law-abiding youth of the constituency Angliston, like past youth parliamentary Lance Scott Darville Jr. said, to impart my invaluable contribution to this resolution and to thank the young people for this great opportunity. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we will try our endeavor and utmost best. But, Mr. Speaker, do you know why we will do our best to accomplish this? Because we know that we are the now and not the today, and not only because we know that we are the now, the today, and not only the future. What we do now, how we do it, and when we do it is what counts. As Mahatma Gandhi said, the future depends on what you do today. Making our contribution now, being involved now, will make a future that the Bahamian people are dreaming of, and will give the youth of the tomorrow a trend to follow. Isn't that excellent? But how that can be possible, Mr. Speaker? John Dooney said, no man is an island, and so is no youth an island. Mr. Speaker, my duty is to address the implementation of the national youth policy. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas has been an independent country from 1973 and now is celebrating its 40th anniversary.
With the theme, The Bridge to the Future, the journey continues. The bridge is us, the youth. The future is what we do now and what are going to do. The bridge is to connect the now and the promising future that results in the Bahamian life and the country going to be more prosperous. So why not have a national youth policy that can take our youth to the next level and our country that can be and will be to the top of the world? But Mr. Speaker, after so many years, it has been hard to believe that the implementation and the enactment of a national youth policy is still non-existent. We are supposed to be a developing country that looks forward for our aspiring youth to take charge, leading this marvelous country to become the best in the world. But Mr. Speaker, how can we do this? Some naysayers sarcastically say youth are the future, but it's hard to believe that they want us to become the future. When we can become the now that can result in the future, could never imagine. Webster New English Dictionary defines the following terms as policy, as a high overall plan embracing the general goals and acceptable procedures, especially of a government body. Youth is defined as a period between childhood and maturity. National is defined as belonging to or maintained by the federal government. Therefore, a national youth policy is seen as a declaration and a commitment of the priorities, directions, and practical support that the country intends to give to the development of its young men and women. Mr. Speaker, in the context of competing budgets and the multiple priorities, governments and civil society sometimes need to be convinced about the importance of youth-centered policy. The honorable members of this House, look around you. Look at the news. Aren't you convinced already? It has been decades in which the legislation was tossed up and down the House of Assembly. How can we safely go about our daily lives knowing the critical condition our young people are in today, Mr. Speaker? Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, I understand that as of 2013, we are currently near the final stage of implementing this national youth policy. But that still isn't enough. We, the youth, are the ones who will run this country and the ones who make decisions. Countries around the world have implemented a national youth policy that has ended up in many benefits for their youth, especially the country and its people. According to the youthpolicy.org that the honorable member of Michael and Exuma said, as of January 2013, of 198 countries, 50% of a current youth policy, of future 50%, 28% are revising their existing or in a few cases, developing their first national youth policy. A total of 43 states has not yet passed a youth policy. Mr. Speaker, half of the world has a national youth policy, exactly 99. Let's be that 100 to have a national youth policy. We as a nation want to make a change, be different, get the Bahamas out to the entire world. But Mr. Speaker, I beg to differ. I believe the people of our nation has forgotten where we have come from. From the man that started this great journey, fought for our freedom to live a life unto us that we will help this great stand. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues and I and the National Youth Policy has the best idea and plan and the right way to take this country to the next level. We want the bridge that continues forever and for the youth to come. Like the Ramming Brothers says, who's going to fill those shoes? Who's going to make the effort to help us, one and all, Mr. Speaker? We are the youth. We all stand resolute that the bridge is us. The future is now. The journey will continue, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Honorable Member of Angliston, thank you very much for your contribution to this resolution. You may now take a seat. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Central and South Abaco.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the great constituents of South and Central Abaco and the youth of our Bahama land to divulge of my inestimable supplement to this resolution. The theme for our Bahamas' 40th independence celebration is the bridge to the future, the journey continues. This metaphorical bridge we refer to are the youth of this very nation. The fundamental element for us to move forward as a nation and to excel as a country are the youth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, referring to an article published by the Nassau Guardian on June 11, 2013, the Bahamas has an overall unemployment rate of 14% that surges to nearly 31% for those between the ages of 15 and 24. It would be unjust and illogical for one to claim that the youth of this nation are not in need of jobs. Mr. Speaker, where are the 10,000 jobs that was promised to our now discouraged youth? Mr. Speaker, it is imperative that the employment of youth be considered a key element in the development of the country. There are countless benefits that are evoked as a result of low unemployment rates. Number one, an increase in the standard of living, Mr. Speaker. Number two, a decrease in poverty. And lastly, a restored and improved economy. The resolution to this bewildering issue, Mr. Speaker, is straightforward. Firstly, more governmental grants. The government granting repayable loans to youth aspiring to establish self-owned businesses. Secondly, bringing forward the entrepreneurial dream to the youth of this Bahamas, which will decrease the high unemployment rate and increase the number of Bahamian-owned businesses. And lastly, offering technical and vocational programs for those that are not as academically inclined as others. A key strategic policy outlined in the National Youth Policy is youth employment. So why, if we have a policy, a national youth policy, is it that we cannot implement this, that we cannot make this policy a legislation? We, the youth of this country, have grown irate because of the unavailability of jobs. In my opinion, the national youth policy is the way forward for the youth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, another objective brought forth in the national youth policy regarding youth employment is the promoting of the sustainability of life through economic development. My fellow honorable members and people of this great nation, economic development can only come about through increased employment, increased self-employment, and more competitive employment for the youth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, taking these steps and inaugurating the National Youth Policy, in my firm belief, will provide employment amongst the youth of this nation. Employment of the youth can and will brighten the future of our nation. Nelson Mandela once stated, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Education is the most powerful weapon that can change the Bahamas. And how can this change take place? Through the very youth of this archipelago. Our allies in the United Kingdom, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago have created schools based solely on the career preferences of their youth. So why, Mr. Speaker, is it that we cannot create schools based on the preferences of our youth? One should not only attempt to educate the youth from an academic perspective, but also considering those that are not as academically inclined as others. Mr. Speaker, neglect is never an option. The implementation of the aforementioned will in fact give every Bahamian youth equal opportunity to attain the necessary skills. Can we sit in this honorable house
and say that steps have been taken by the present and past government to maximize the amount of training acquired by the youth? Yes, we can. And we thank you, honorable members. Honorable Member for Golden Gates, G&D Gibson, has audaciously taken a step forward to provide proper training for the youth of this nation. The National Training Agency. Mr. Speaker, this agency was designed to develop and improve employable skills, transform undesirable attitudes and behaviors toward work, and reduce functional tendencies. Mr. Speaker, it is known by every single being in this honorable house that education is the mover and shaker of nations. Mr. Speaker, recent demographics have shown that the ages between 15 and 25 make up 61% of the Bahamas' population. Does this not present the need for a national youth policy? Mr. Speaker, the nation is in dire need of a policy which will protect the youth. The key goals of the national youth policy are focusing on the development of youth in the Bahamas, defining a common workplace and vision for youth development, articulating the roles and responsibilities of young people and youth, and lastly, Mr. Speaker, to guarantee the development of youth as model citizens. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica's national youth policy was adopted in 2003, and so was Dominica's. So why, Mr. Speaker, that we as a nation after 20 years, that we as a nation of 40 years have yet to establish a national youth policy? There is no doubt that the goals and visions presented in the national youth policy can and will brighten the future of the Bahamas. As a youth parliamentarian, I strongly suggest that the national youth policy be taken into consideration. I say thank you to the constituents of Central and South Abaco for placing me in this honorable house, permitting me to speak on this resolution, but more specifically, youth employment, youth education, and the national youth policy. Thank you, Mr.
Honorable Member for Central and South Abaco, thank you very much for your contribution to the resolution. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Golden Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe the children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. These words, sung by the late Whitney Houston, are as true today as they were when they were written. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the humble constituency of Golden Gates, thanking them for affording me this opportunity to impart my contribution to this resolution. I stand firm on the belief that youth development in its entirety has significant room for further improvement. And if we, as a nation, ever plan to progress, bold initiatives must be enforced that would serve as projectiles in fostering a more competent, capable, and versatile Bahamas. I am completely aware of the fact that what I am proposing may be radical. But, Mr. Speaker, as it stands in this nation and its progression, we need radical. My fellow countrymen, travel back in time with me to a time where education had to be fought for. A time where a future was only guaranteed through the sound investment of an education. A time where all shareholders in this investment played a part and took responsibility. This, Mr. Speaker, was the reality. A reality where education had not just value, but quality. Do we still have this mentality? What is our view on education? Is education still truly valued? Mr. Speaker, a statement by Ministry of Education's Permanent Secretary Elmer Garraway on July 11, 2010 proclaims only 20% continue their education after high school. The remainder simply chooses not to enroll or lack the basic literacy and numeracy skills required. A fact sheet published by COB's website reveals only 1,737 out of about 5,000 who completed high school were able to enroll in the fall 2012 semester. Journalist Neil Hardnell reported that on July 23, 2012, findings from the Inter-American Development Bank, which showed a mere 48% average graduation rates at Bahamian public schools. Mr. Speaker, these results are troubling. This repeat culture of producing illiterate students who can't continue their education must change. And in my opinion, Mr. Speaker, the youth of this nation are not the only problem. In fact, it is our lack of concern about the poor quality of education. Let's face it, Mr. Speaker, our education system is failing. And the reason why it is failing is because we as a nation no longer value a sound investment. Mr. Speaker, any dialogue on education would have to include the widely accepted viewpoint that education starts at home. Parents are our first teachers. If a child is not able to read at the appropriate grade level when they are young, that parent or guardian should be required to attend enhanced literacy sessions and classes, teaching them how to work with their children at home. Studies from the Eunice Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development in Bethesda, Maryland revealed that students with involved parents, no matter their income or background, are more likely to earn higher grades and test scores, attend school regularly, and graduate to go on to post-secondary education. And by encouraging parents to be held accountable, we also encourage teachers to be held accountable for the many lives they influence every day. A bonus system, Mr. Speaker, should be rewarded to teachers who influence growth and student altitude. For each struggling student that shows improvement, this incentive should be provided as it encourages growth. And for better results, the National Grade Level Assessment Test should be exercised not just in grades 3 and 6, but at each grade level to ensure that students at a young age perform their best every semester. And as teachers, assist students from going from improved to most improved to distinction. The teacher too grows in her efforts and is rewarded. But these are only two sets of people that influence enhancement of education, Mr. Speaker. Let us not neglect the fact that it takes a village to raise a child. Community integration must be encouraged. Employers who assist the children of employees by ways of outreach programs, research facilities, after-school tutoring, and homework assistance should receive meaningful incentives from the government. Tax exemption and customs rebate can be given as an incentive for contributing to the nation's investment, the youth. A radical solution to a radical problem. An uneducated child, Mr. Speaker, is just too expensive. According to the Central Bank of the Bahamas, from 2004 to 2012, the country has spent over $2 billion in education. Would you, Mr. Speaker, spend $2 billion into a failing business? We do care, Mr. Speaker. The youth of today envision this bridge that must be built. We are not content with mediocrity, and we intend to do something about it. The blueprint has been drawn. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Golden Gates, thank you very much for your contribution. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Long Island.
I rise on behalf of the industrious constituency of Long Island and I would like to offer my sincerest gratitude to them for allowing me to stand before you today. Mr. Speaker, Paradise Island Bridge, built in 1988, was a $21 million project undertaken with the intent of making travel between New Providence and Paradise Island convenient and efficient. The bridge, however, is not the only means for crossing the bay. It was just as possible to use a boat. So, why then was the bridge built? The answer, Mr. Speaker, is simple. Because while not everyone may have a boat, anyone can walk across a bridge. Thus, the purpose of the bridge is not to facilitate a privileged few, but to provide a greater opportunity for the majority. A nation is nothing without its people. And it is precisely because of the people, Mr. Speaker, that we must first seek to improve the lives of all Bahamians, including our youth, before we can even think about improving the nation as a whole. In doing so, we must consider the economic, educational, and social conditions that affect all of the young citizens of this nation. Mr. Speaker, a key element in enhancing the standard of living of all Bahamians, especially for our youth, is securing a stronger economy by encouraging diversity. The Bahamian economy is almost completely service-based. According to the CIA fact book, our service sector constitutes 90.8% of the Bahamian gross domestic product. This includes tourism, which denotes 60%. Why is such a fragile industry able to hold such complete control over our economy? Why allow an industry fed on by numerous foreign entities to become our greatest source of income? In 2012, the Bahamas gained $790 million in exports. In turn, we expended almost $3 billion on imports. As an independent nation, we are too heavily dependent on foreign bodies. Not only should we encourage Bahamian agriculture and manufacturing, we must also encourage Bahamians to purchase locally produced goods to help to reduce the demand for their foreign counterparts. Our journey to self-sufficiency begins with this one undeniably vital step. We must review our philosophies and what we deem honorable, Mr. Speaker, if this gap in our economy is to be bridged. The same must also be applied to our educational system. The importance of education is undeniable. A grasp of topics such as mathematics and the English language holds great importance in any modern society. But extensive academic schooling should not be seen as the only viable option. As the national average remains at a disheartening level, it is becoming clear that significant adjustments to the curriculum must be made. Our traditional educational system puts intense focus on academics, and though other more hands-on options are available, they are seen as less important and, in many cases, frivolous waste of time. While we must not ignore those whose talents lie in a primarily academic field, we must soften the mindset of Bahamians towards people whose talents are more manual and technical. Not only must we encourage those with aptitude in such fields to pursue them, but also actively instruct those young Bahamians in the practice of such tasks. The renowned scientist Albert Einstein once said, "Everyone is a genius, but if you test a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will live its life thinking that it is stupid." It is incumbent upon leaders at all levels to encourage our youth to think independently and do not demoralize them when they do. The test of our transition into the next 40 years of independence, Mr. Speaker, is how effectively we can encourage young people with academic and technical skills to develop and reach their highest potential. The recently established National Training Agency may very well be a step towards answering this problem. The necessary changes to be made should begin with the implementation of such programs, but it should not end there. full integration of these programs into the system so that it becomes a concept that is embraced entirely by young Bahamians should be the next phase. On this journey into the future, Mr. Speaker, equal opportunities must be set out in the way of economic status, which in turn is dependent on significant adjustments in education. These are necessary to bridge the gap between the present, older, and younger generation. In order to achieve this, it is of the utmost importance that equality at the most fundamental of levels be ensured. Mr. Speaker, I see a bridge to the future that leads to more opportunities, not just for those with special advantages, but for the greater majority. We have come so far as a nation in the 40 years since our independence, but the journey is far from over. Let us continue to improve ourselves and march on towards a common, loftier goal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Long Island, thank you very much for your contribution. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Eleuthera.
It gives me great pleasure to be here and rise in this honorable chamber on behalf of the magnificent people of Central and South Eleuthera. I must admit that we on the island face many challenges, and I am here as the voice and not just a murmur of the people. They are unemployment, education, and immigration. Mr. Speaker, my contributions will be on the topic of illegal immigration. Without any reasonable doubt, the Bahamas must be for Bahamians first. The sweeping changes of which I will speak will not wait. They cannot wait. My generation must survive. Mr. Speaker, if we are truly serious about taking our country in the right direction, I put it to the august body that we must summon the courage of our founding fathers and once and for all tackle the problem in Eleuthera that we call the Haitian problem. Yes, we must completely revamp our immigration policies with respect to Haitian nationals if young Bahamians are to inherit a country of our own. I believe that this is not as difficult as politicians make it out to be. Here is how we do it. First, effective immediately, we abort the entry of all Haitians into the Bahamas. Those who are here may stay, but no new Haitians may enter. To ensure this, we will run a naval blockage in the southern Bahamas between Inagua and the southeastern tip of Cuba. This blockage will intercept any Haitian vessel that may enter the Bahamas. They must understand, yes, they must be made to understand that the Bahamas is a sovereign nation and we decide who may enter our country, not them. In a very short time, we will have little or no need for detention centers at Carmichael Road. In addition, we offer an amnesty period of 1 year during which all Haitians who are here illegally may apply for and receive a work permit without fear of deportation. We don't care how you got here or when you came, once you are here before the naval blockage begins. This process will accomplish several things. First of all, it will help to solve our illegal immigration problem. Moreover, since we know that there are thousands of illegal immigrants in the country, this exercise will add substantially to the public treasury. Circumspectly, in the article Bahamas and Haiti, published by the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada, the British Broadcasting reported that the number of Haitians living in the Bahamas is estimated at 80,000 out of a population of approximately 350,000. Let's say that they each pay the government $1,000. That's $300 million right there, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, because all of the recently converted will begin paying national insurance, immediately the public coffers will continue to grow. And finally, this exercise will at last allow us to accurately know how many Haitians are in the country. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, I would like to reminisce on the 121 lives that were left homeless due to the recent obliteration in one of the existing shanty towns. Mr. Speaker, if we are to prevent this from ever happening again, we must apply the impending decree. If you're going to reside here, you will live in a proper home with proper use. Towns in the Bahamas are to be demolished. Let me say swiftly that my Haitian brothers are only partially to blame. For the ones that do exist now. Most of the blame falls on the heads of the Bahamian brothers who own the land. And so legislation must be drafted and passed into the law that deals severely with the Bahamians who transgress. The journey continues. We are moving our country forward, not backwards. Furthermore, Haitian Creole is to be added to the school curriculum without delay. Mr. Speaker, for more than 5 decades, successive governments have struggled with this immigration.
Please sit down, please. Thank you very much.
With this immigration problem without success. The results? Tens of thousands, maybe more, a substantial sector of our population whose language we do not understand. Oh, they understand us, but we don't understand them.
Honorable Member for South Eleuthera, thank you very much for your contribution. You may have a seat. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Tall Pines.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the superb people of Tall Pines who has given me this awesome opportunity to speak in this great House of Honorables. Mr. Speaker, the bridge to the future cannot be crossed until we as youth can get through the roadblocks which are preventing us from realizing our full potential. We daily face ever-increasing negative acts which are committed by young men and women who are lacking the effective programs to keep them motivated. Mr. Speaker, I am sure if you were to ask my colleagues, they would surely agree with me. While there are a number of roadblocks and hurdles that are threatening our advancement, the 3 most prevalent ones I wish to expand on are peer pressure, lack of substantial investment in today's youth, and crime. Ideally, it all starts within the home. Parents are not giving enough attention to the needs of the youth, whereas they are going into the streets with troublesome circles. Mr. Speaker, peer pressure is not only a problem in the Bahamas, it's around the world. In the Bahamas, it was reported in a November 17, 2012 article in the Nassau Guardian that an average of 700 teenage girls are impregnated each year, with 20% of them becoming pregnant again in their teens. According to Georgia Adolescent Substance Abuse Fact Report of 2011, as it relates to the percentages of substance with teens in grades 9 to 12 exceed to, the results are as follows. Cigarette smoking, 53%, drugs, 39%, alcohol, 17%. Mr. Speaker, I ask my fellow parliamentarians in the Bahamas, like Georgia, what are we going to do about this? Well, I submit to you that it is our duty to build the confidence of our youth through the effective programs that will help them to stand up for themselves, because at this young age of a child's life, they are trying to find their self-identity. Parental support and training is also very much needed to assist in this process. Crime is getting out of hand. People are stuck in boxes trying to get out. As stated in the online Oxford Dictionary, crime is an action or omission which constitutes an offense and is punishable by law. Moreover, it's important that we find a solution for our young people so that they will not be included in these statistics. According to the Consultative Committee on National Youth Development 1995, the crime percentages were 53% of all violent crimes committed by juveniles. Could you imagine if the Bahamas would be added to these statistics? Mr. Speaker, I submit that the crime hurdle can only be tackled when the other two most prevalent hurdles can be addressed. Programs such as the Fresh Starter Program, the Self-Starter Program, the many summer programs, and the National Band Program offered by Ministry of Youth and Culture are excellent. But however, these programs are not far-reaching as they could be. Like Barack Obama said, and I quote, "We have an obligation and it's our responsibility to be investing in students and our schools. We must make sure that the people who have the grades, the desire, and the will, but not the money, can still get the best education possible." The government needs to invest more in youth. The clubs, programs, and training to keep our youth of this Bahamas land full of activities to ensure that they are away from things that will cause them to fail in life. My solution to address this problem is to start canvassing the streets of New Providence.
Honorable Member for Tall Ponds, as much as I would like to hear the rest of your speech, the business of this House must continue.
Mr. Speaker,
Thank you for your contribution. You may now have a seat.
Thank you.
As many, the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Seabreeze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I proudly rise on behalf of the respectable, jovial, and warm young people of Seabreeze, thanking them for the opportunity to sit in this honorable house. Mr. Speaker, how is one to better the future if they know nothing of the past? Like what our forefathers fought for and marching on Bahama land. Mr. Speaker, how am I to govern the country if I do not know the mistakes made in the past? Making these mistakes again will not be very smart. Mr. Speaker, I feel that the implementation of a mandatory National Bahamian Civics curriculum will be of great benefit
to not just the youth, but the Bahamas at large. Although there is currently a civics curriculum within the Bahamas, there are a few critical issues with that curriculum and what a Bahamian should know at large about civics in the Bahamas. These issues are as follows. 1, we do not value the current civics curriculum. 2, we should know our rights and duties as citizens. 3, the current curriculum is outdated and lacks much content. And 4, it is not available in all schools for all students. Mr. Speaker, I commend all those who put their minds together and saw the need to have a civics curriculum implemented. But we must not forget that presentation is key. When looking at the manual for the 1996 Ministry of Education civics curriculum, I was more than disappointed to see the way in which the curriculum was printed. Parts of the document were not legible, some of the words were slanted off of the paper, and the document was not properly numbered. Mr. Speaker, is this the correct way to present something of value? We must remember presentation when doing things. The first step would be to correct the way in which the curriculum is presented. Another issue pertaining to the value of the curriculum is that there is no national examination for the subject. Besides the fact that it is not even available in all schools for all students, after an individual takes the subject for 3 years, grades 10 through 12, there is no BGCSE to show what they have worked so hard on in that subject. Mr. Speaker, we must restore value to the subject by fixing the way in which it is printed and adding a civics BGCSE to track the progress of the curriculum, to find ways to even better it. We must start with the youth of today, Mr. Speaker, to get the value that we need for tomorrow. My second critical issue is the fact that many individuals do not know the way in which this country is governed. Neither do they know their rights as citizens so that they can make informed judgments both now and in the future. Without having the mandatory civics curriculum, individuals are not really grasping how to be responsible, informed, and active citizens. I conducted an informal survey within various communities, and to my surprise, when asked what is civics, 75% of the individuals from ages 14 to 25 had no clue, while the remaining 25% of the individuals confused civics with history. We are the future parliamentarians, doctors, and entrepreneurs. Mr. Speaker, we are the creme de la creme. And to make a brighter future for this nation, this civics curriculum is needed. Because the more we know as a nation, the more we will grow as a nation. The fact still remains that we are the future of the Bahamas. That is not an option. So why make civics one? My third and final critical issue is the fact that the current curriculum is outdated and lacks much content. There are strong points within the curriculum, such as outstanding Bahamians and government. But when reading the curriculum, you tend to get lost on what really is civics. The curriculum is more toward tourism, sports, and culture, rather than the way in which we run this beautiful nation and the rights of the people. This issue is just a matter of revising the current curriculum. The civics curriculum was written from 1996. Mr. Speaker, the curriculum is older than most of the youth parliamentarians here. Mr. Speaker, events such as this are building blocks. This civics curriculum is concrete, and we, the youth, are building this bridge to the future. Like a great Chinese philosopher said, and my fellow youth parliamentarian for North Andres, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So how about we take 2 steps? A step to value, because we must value this curriculum. A step to know, because the more we know, the more we grow. And a step to make it all better, because this journey, yes, this journey still continues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Seabridge, thank you very much for your contribution. As many. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Nassau Village.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a privilege to be able to speak today within this House on behalf of the proud constituents of Nassau Village. I have but one point that I wish to delve into, Mr. Speaker, and that point is education. Not civics, but education. Education is one of the fundamental aspects of youth development and a major priority that both the National Youth Policy and our society must focus on. The importance of education in a developing nation cannot be understated. And in the perspective of youth development, we see it as a tool in which the youth are able to broaden their horizons, allowing the door of opportunity to be opened for themselves and others, and most importantly, give them the ability to move this country forward. In the Bahamas, the state of education has not always been one that we have been proud of. Even now, more than ever, we can only look at the facts and be filled with shame. Facts that my colleagues have already explored today. A declining national grade average, an increase in failures in key subjects such as math and English, a drop in attendance for higher learning. Those are just the facts, and together they spell out a much larger picture, that the Bahamas is in dire need of education reform. The answer, Mr. Speaker, the solution that we so desperately need is simple. We must reevaluate our commitment to education. And, Mr. Speaker, I know that it is often said, but I am saying it again because it is necessary. In reevaluating this commitment, we must see how best we are able to update and expand upon our curriculum taught in our schools, giving it real-world application, so that students will not only be able to understand what they are learning, but why they are learning it. Studies performed by Carnegie Mellon University and other institutions have proven that such an innovative approach to education is an overall benefit to the student. Beyond curriculum, we must ensure that education continues to cater to the needs of developing a holistic individual and, in the end, a productive citizen. The government must ensure that the resources that are needed to better develop the education system of this country are made available, whether it be books actually from this century or newer technologies that we must integrate. And not just for the students, Mr. Speaker, but for the teachers as well, who can only do so much with what little they have. And while I am on the topic of resources, Mr. Speaker, I feel compelled to speak on the Family Island. The sad and awful truth, Mr. Speaker, is that the resources that are made available to the youth of the capital are not made available to the youth in the Family Island. And the idea that we can just take these children, sit them down in front of a desk, and expect them to perform at the same level as everyone else, not just in the Bahamas, but across the world, is not just wrong, Mr. Speaker, but obscene. There must exist a fair and equal distribution of the necessary tools and equipment to all parts of the Bahamas, if we are to move forward as a country into a future led by the youth. Then, Mr. Speaker, we must ensure that all youth of the Bahamas are given that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, as we celebrate 40 years since our independence, there is simply one thing that we must remember as we move forward. The true worth of a nation is not measured by its age, by the size of the celebrations that it can hold, by the amount of flags that adorn every car, every street, and every building. It instead is measured by how it can take care of its own people. Let us not forget that. That is why we need a national youth policy, to protect and care for the interests of our youth and the future of our nation, to remind them of our commitment to them, that despite the differences that we may have in this honorable house, we remain committed to them and that we will always remain their government too. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Nassau Village, thank you very much for your contribution. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Elizabeth.
Mr. Speaker, I find it indeed a privilege to rise on behalf of the liberating and concerned constituents of Elizabeth. I humbly thank them for this opportunity to sit in this honorable house, and I vow to uphold the decorum of this house without blemish. I am here today to ask, why has our generation stopped dreaming, but willing to give a solution that allows our dream, our generation, to dream again? What is the Bahamian dream? Well, many cannot answer for this. Reason being, our young Bahamians has predestined themselves in a permanent state that has left them bewildered on how it is to live a dream, but also more importantly, what it is to succeed in this dream. Not because they lack rococo imagination or creativity, but because they have lost guidance from the older generation to continue this bridge to the future. The older generation has been so monotonous that the necessary information, what needed to be transferred, was transferred accurately, but not impactfully. Whereas, this brings me to a vital reason. The Bahamas has lost sight of dreams because we don't know what it is to be a Bahamian and how to elevate this title. Civics is an option in many schools, and this minor fault can reverse a major problem. If a well-organized civics curriculum is presented, Bahamians would have assurance of whom they are. If there is no socialization, there is no education. If there is no education, there is no dreams. A civics curriculum is an assurance of a socialization growth for a child that does not have guidance of these values at home, but can be positive to obtain them when they go to school. During an interview with a SAC graduate, he said, and I quote, "Bahamians today dream of the Atlantis job or a 9-to-5 job that pays for basic needs. But his dreams, on the other hand, is to seek Bahamians are put first. A revamped educational system that gives everyone equal opportunity. But most importantly, that produces fine men and women of this generation that comes back and give back so another generation can dream." This here showed me there is still optimism. Knowledge is power. I reiterate, knowledge is power. And in this case, civic knowledge is the empowerment of making our Bahamian dream come true, which is having proper education
having complete ownership of our country, and most importantly, living our dream and not nobody else. As a youth parliamentary, I plead to the government to make the reality of a mandatory civics curriculum in every school so that my dream helps another dreamer finish Celinda's dream, Perry Christie's dream, Hubert Ingram's dream, Samalo's dream, and so on. Because the list of aspirations is so long, it would take more than 6 minutes to complete it. Do you remember our golden nights? When their victory at the 2012 Olympic Games in London, that was a dream, and it composed of socialization, ambition, determination, and discipline. Whereas this time, and in this same aspiration and keenness can be instilled in the youth today. And this can be instilled through a mandatory civics curriculum, where civics is the foundation. We have never been a nation to settle for mediocrity. So why start now? In the words of the Right Honorable Sir Lyndon Oscar Penland, I see a Bahamas envied by all other nations because of its high quality of life, peacefulness, prosperity, unity, and care for its people. I saw there was a time when a Bahamian did not count as much. The Bahamian was tolerated but not recognized. Now, we are given full recognition and cannot just be tolerated. Today, I see a nation where our national commitment is care and protection and preservation and helping of its members of society, and where the poor and the disadvantaged and the impaired are seen as everyone's responsibility. Independence will mean work for us all, self-reliance for us all, dignity for us all. But the mere fact is that this generation will continue this bridge to the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Elizabeth, thank you very much for your contribution, as many. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Southern Shores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the constructive and well-learned people of Southern Shores and the youth of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, thanking them for the opportunity to represent them in this great house. Mr. Speaker, a national youth policy can be defined as an essential planning tool guiding the country on its approach to youth development. One may ask, with all the infrastructure geared towards the youth of this country already, why would the implementation of a national youth policy serve to improve these existing institutions? Asking this question would be equivalent to wondering why a long-term partner pushes for marriage. The desire for a commitment, something set in stone, is a common trait of that partner and the youth of this country. Our Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, Dr. Daniel Johnson, has promised during the National Youth Policy Summit of 2012 that the policy will be #1 on his agenda, and I do believe that this is a symbol of his commitment to the youth of this nation. Mr. Speaker, the time granted does not allow me to cover every area of this policy. However, my interest is directed towards who will benefit from a national youth policy should it be implemented. My main focus groups that are listed numerically are 1. Marginalized youth, 2. Youth professionals, and 3. Family islanders, as previously addressed by at least 8 of my learned colleagues. Mr. Speaker, when I use the term marginal, I refer to the young people whom society has labeled simply just there, the 60%ers. Too often we focus on the bad and exceptionally intelligent, who on either side of the spectrum represent the 20, while the majority, hence the term 60%ers, receives a mere pat on the back. Mr. Speaker, if this was not so, take a look at almost every platform that empowers youth through educational means and ask yourself, who are they geared towards? The answer would always prove in favor of hot or cold and never lukewarm. So at the end of the day, the underachiever can have a story about how they
started from the bottom. The overachiever has a trophy case and the average achiever receives a handshake and a solemn nod. Mr. Speaker, why not allow for all levels of intelligence to be acknowledged and appreciated through recognition that skill and creativity are just as important as intellect? Mr. Speaker, on addressing my second focus group of youth professionals, I remember going to career fairs and the like since I was young. No one instructed me how to be an entrepreneur, to use my creativity and passion to sustain myself in life. The word passion in career fairs was never used, no, not once. The only option, though attractively presented, that laid before me was to be a worker. The need for creativity was not discussed. In addition, there are many young Bahamians in this country who have the credentials, the paper, but not the opportunity because they are seen as overqualified. This is the generation that has gained the most, yet it seems as though there is no profit to what they have gained. What if, Mr. Speaker, we the youth do not want to labor in someone else's empire? What if more than just a few of us wish to build our own? Mr. Speaker, I should not have to leave my country, taking along with me my positive contributions to live the Bahamian dream. I would like to suggest, Mr. Speaker, for the assessment of individual interest among the youth through the policy and allow young business-minded people in our country to have a professional atmosphere like a summit to present plans, drafts, and other ideas for consideration which, if approved, can be financed through the implementation of a national youth trust that can be established through the policy. Mr. Speaker, the last point that I make reference to is the nearest to my heart, the Family Island. Yes, I know we've heard this 7, 8 times already, but a 9th time won't hurt. I am from the islands of Bimini. My parents, who knew of the limited opportunities in that island, realized that for my sake, that it would be best to ship me off here to New Providence so that I could have more exposure. This is a trend that happens in almost every family island, and it has been going on for years. While I am grateful to them for that decision, Mr. Speaker, the fact that their intuition proved correct says something. Just listen to my fellow colleagues from every family island constituency and the others who are not even representatives of those constituencies. At least one of us must know what we are talking about. Mr. Speaker, New Providence is one of the smaller islands of the countries. Yet so many people send their children here. So for the sake of opportunities, I, along with many other family island youth, go for months, up to a year, and sometimes over without seeing our families. That's the reality, Mr. Speaker. Now here's a solution. The country, first and foremost, must always in all things be recognized in a whole, in which resources shall be distributed equally or per capita according to youth population throughout the various islands. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, my fellow colleagues and I do not mark the House of Assembly by simply presenting a speech. We, the young people, did not come to rant. We, the young people, did not come to be cynical. We are not brainwashed, wannabe, rehearsed politicians. However, Mr. Speaker, we, the young people, came to address and resolve the issues of youth in our country, issues that heavily involve us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Southern Shores, thank you very much for your contribution. As many. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand before you as a representative not only of the patriotic constituents of the Central Grand Bahama, but also on behalf of the youth of this great nation. And I humbly give regards of gratitude for bestowing me with the honor and opportunity of speaking here today. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king of Judah. Alexander the Great was 20 when he became king of Macedonia, and 30 when he conquered the world. Joan of Arc was 19 when she died not only for her country, but also for her religion, not only after leading her country to several victories during the 100 Years' War. Jesus Christ was 33 when he revolutionized the world in ways I can't even describe. Young people can develop this country in ways not even our forefathers imagined. But first, we must develop them. I rise today, the 26th day of July 2013, to address and offer solutions to two social issues: crime and poor academic performance. Mr. Speaker, a study completed in 1978 reported a direct correlation between delinquency and low self-esteem, and found evidence linking increased self-esteem and a reduction of delinquent behavior. The study found that as programs were implemented to raise the level of self-esteem, the incidence of delinquent behavior was reduced. Fellow delegates, our stated concerns and our determination to do something about crime would be insincere and meaningless if what we do is demonstrated only by what we are prepared to do to young people, and not what we are prepared to do for young people. The words of the father of this nation, Sir Lyndon Pinley. Let us prepare to help our youth by devising a national center for youth development, with a program aimed to try to eradicate criminal acts amongst youth. We must develop a mandatory program for delinquent youth within the schools that would make effort to transform young criminals into law-abiding citizens by focusing on raising their self-esteem. Mr. Speaker, although I wholeheartedly believe that we must train our youth to become leaders of our Bahama land, I also feel as though not everyone is meant to lead a country. We still must equip our young Bahamians with the educational ammunition which they seem to lack. The Honorable Minister of Education, Jerome Fitzgerald, stated last year that nearly 50% of high school students did not meet the requirements needed to graduate. For years, we as a nation have struggled with a below-average national grade being a D as of 2012. A 2005 study by the Boys and Girls Club Education Enhancement proves that students who participate in youth development center programs had higher academic averages in comparison to those individuals who had not participated, thus meaning that the development of this national center would possibly enhance the national grade average, increasing it from a mediocre D to possibly a B or maybe even an A. Mr. Speaker, invest. I insert time and energy into helping our youth and never give up on them. V, vitalize their dreams. E, equip them with leadership and decision-making skills. S, stand beside them as equal. T, treat them as though each of their voices matter. Invest in our youth, Bahamas. Invest. Thank you.
Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama, thank you very much for your contribution. As many. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Pinewood.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on behalf of the resilient people of Pinewood and the youth of the Bahamas, thanking them for allowing me this great opportunity. Our country has taken some outstanding leaps over the past 40 years. But I assure you, there is always room for improvement. With that said, I am here today to discuss two crucial issues. One, it appears to me that our youth lack essential historic knowledge of the Bahamas. And two, we as youths have the need to be inspired. Fellow parliamentarians, as demonstrated here today, we understand our past, but we are looking into our future. 40 years from now, we must see remarkable programs, essential structures, and legislatures being implemented. We must see our main industry being that of related to our own culture. We see the next generation and our generation remembering the contributions of our nation's heroes. We see the young people of tomorrow continuing to progress and thrive because we are inclined to our roots of greatness. My father always said,
If you don't know where you came from, then you don't know where you're going. We are the youth of the future. We are not being given the fair chance to take our country higher globally. Mr. Speaker, I ask the Bahamian people, how can we expect to take a step forward when we don't know the foundation we stand on? Mr. Speaker, we ask that a mandatory civics curriculum be executed in all schools, from preschool to high school. As humorous as it may sound, when we are toddlers, this is the period of our life where we remember the most things that we learned. Why do you think that Jack and Jill, who went up that hill, and Humpty Dumpty, who sat on that wall and had a great fall, are so memorable? Mr. Speaker, we cannot stress the fact that we mean all schools. It's been said many times from my learning colleagues, but the Family Islanders it seems as if they have been swept away and forgotten for too long. Mr. Speaker, we realize this problem and we see that it be resolved. Yes, fellow parliamentarians, a civics curriculum is implemented at some schools and some students do take them. We commend that. But why not all? Mr. Speaker, we beseech a change. The second issue I refer to is that the inspiration the mandatory civics curriculum will give our young people. According to Mediate.com, the most likely reason for crime committed by our young people of the Bahamas is because they lack the sense of identity. Mr. Speaker, I ask again, how can we expect for a person to know who they are if they don't know where they come from? It is a downright injustice to let our country dwindle through our fingers simply because we forgot the contributions of our heroes. Many outside this great house may claim that the youth are lost, that our priorities are gangs, sexual activities, and partying. And to these claims, we are appalled. We are frustrated, and like my learning colleague said, we are flabbergasted. Many of our youth are not so distracted. Many of them are searching for themselves, searching for opportunities, looking forward to a bright future we speak of. I ask the government and the stakeholders of our country, give us a chance. Implement a mandatory civics curriculum in all schools, but also let us enhance it. How is it, Mr. Speaker, that we can improve our homes and our cars, but something that is a nationally used tool, we forget to update it? Mr. Speaker, I again urge the government to take our people seriously. We are not lazy, we are smart. So please, do not destroy our spirit. Our solutions to these two crucial issues will not only change the mentality, but knit us closer together. I'll leave you with this. Do one our quotes. We should stand together with children speaking for themselves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Pinewood, thank you very much for your contribution. As many. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Cat Island.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the apprehensive, compassionate, and striving nation of the wonderful island of Cat Island, I stand here as a voice for the youth, thanking them for giving me the privilege to speak on their behalf. The children are our future is a famous quote we hear frequently on the ZNS channel. But do we take the time out to acknowledge these words? Do we think about where our future will be? Sadly, many of us don't. Mr. Speaker, what is crime? According to the dictionary.com website, crime can be defined as an action or an instance of negligence that is deemed injurious to the public welfare or morals or to the interest of the state and that is legally prohibited. It aches my heart to see youth being arrested for committing crimes such as robberies, murders, sexual assault and battery, and so on. Statistics from the Bahamas B2B.com website stated that in 2008, there were 108 juvenile cases, and that by 2009, This amount increased by approximately 79.6%, amounting to 194 juvenile cases. I challenge you, Mr. Speaker, to think about why young ones perform such violent acts. Think about where the influence comes from that controls the minds of each individual. Think about what motivates them to do erroneous things. Chairman of the National Child Protection Council, Pastor Jill Maycock, said, Mr. Speaker, children emulate what they see and hear in their homes and neighborhoods. Like my mother always tells me, children are like sponges. They soak up everything you do before them. In other words, children who are exposed to violence at an early age may suffer from emotional trauma, which can impair their cognitive development. Mr. Speaker, the gang violence among our youth is ridiculous. Based on information from the Bahamas press, 2 men are dead. Let me reiterate, Mr. Speaker, dead following the Haitian gang violence on Grand Bahama, that gang known as Zopound. Like Ziggy Ranks, a famous Caribbean artist, said in his song, another one gone again. Me tired of this miserable life. Let's encourage our youth to join SCM, Student Christian Movement. Instead of Zopound, let's join Pathfinders and direct a path that leads to success in its place of death. Back home in Cat Island, the children are being neglected and robbed of splendid opportunities. There are no rangers, no police cadets, no stationary basketball camp, absolutely none present on Cat Island. Mr. Speaker, what do you expect the children to do? There is certainly too much free time on their hands. Hence, they are engaged in violent acts. I believe we need to keep them busy by providing the different programs as mentioned earlier, such as ranges or basketball camps. Mr. Speaker, it has taken 6 years, 6 entire years of research and preparation to draw the matter of national youth policy to the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, Honorable Dr. Daniel Johnson. Mr. Johnson stated that he hoped to bring the manuscript to Cabinet sometime before the Christmas holiday and then on to Parliament for deliberation within the first quarter of 2013. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, it is July and the policy has not been tabled. Mr. Speaker, he said, as mentioned by my colleague, this national youth policy will be #1 on my agenda to take to Parliament. He then continues stating that the Bahamas have some of the brightest young people in the world and how important it is to establish a properly functioning National Youth Council. And whereas the Bahamian youth will take this opportunity to reflect on the journey that led to independence 40 years ago, pay homage to the people, and look forward to the progress of the generation for an even better future. Thank you.
Honorable Member for Cat Island, thank you very much for your contribution. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Fox Hill.
As the representative of Fox Hill, I rise to speak on behalf of the youth of this great and historic community, and I thank them for this phenomenal opportunity. Mr. Speaker, the journey of independence continues as the Bahamas tries to keep pace with the many opportunities and challenges faced with the world today. The greatest challenge that the youth in our nation are trying to deal with, understand, and respect are frustrated and in many cases...
Let us keep the noise to a minimum, please. Show respect.
...wayward parents. The lack of good and proper communication in most homes in the Bahamas has caused a serious breakdown in the family structure. There seems to be no motivation for personal growth, positivity, and productivity. Young people are seeking protection in their peers, who in most cases are also facing challenges at home. Mr. Speaker, peer pressure is a very serious thing. It's a very serious problem in our society. It has caused our youth to join gangs, experiment with drugs, and engage in sexual activities. Mr. Speaker, our youth are silently speaking to you. They are asking for your help. Nobody hears them, nobody sees them, and nobody is listening. Everybody seems to be focusing on their family and only notice the youth when they get in trouble. Mr. Speaker, are we becoming a nation of selfish people? I was told that by my grandmother that people cared for each other in their communities in the past. It took a village. If it took a village to raise a child then, why not now? As our journey of independence continues, who are we going to hold responsible for the future of our youth? Mr. Speaker, the youth are searching for love and acceptance from parents, grandparents, and from the people they interact with daily. There are problems fitting into society because of the lack of role models in their homes and in our society at large. They are silently asking the question, is there anyone who really cares about me? Mr. Speaker, the lack of a father figure at home has contributed to the breakdown in many homes, especially the homes of single mothers with more than one child. Fathers must show concern for their children in their homes, financially, spiritually, and morally. Fathers and in many cases mothers should be held accountable for their children's actions when society fails them. Mr. Speaker, the youth are asking, where do I fit in this equation? Mr. Speaker, the final issue that I am addressing is unemployment situation in the Bahamas. Unemployment is a very serious and grave situation for the Bahamas, for the Bahamians. The present rate of unemployment is 34% by statistics. It affects everyone in the home and increases the level of poverty in the Bahamas. We are all aware that unemployment is a major contributor to the breakdown of families and the level of criminal activities in the Bahamas. We as a nation need to take a stand. We need to stand as one nation, one people, living together in a democratic society. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people must stand together as one nation, moving forward to become better fathers and mothers, create more jobs, and work harder at reducing the crime rate. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas cannot afford to lose its young sons and daughters to the streets and to the grave. When are the pain and cries for helping going to stop? When? Mr. Speaker, the future of the Bahamas can be brighter if we create a new vision and mission to correct the challenges we are facing now. We must look at the past in order to create a better tomorrow and a better future for our youth. The youth are the future of our country. The dreams and aspirations for our country must never die. They must live. Let them stay alive. Mr. Speaker, in order for our youth to develop as productive citizens of the Bahamas, a national youth policy must be implemented. The national youth policy will improve education, health, and the quality of life for young Bahamians, and ensure the investment in youth takes place at all levels of society that will allow the contribution of all over the Bahamas. The contribution to the social, economic, political, and cultural change and all over development of the Bahamian society. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, we as a people must focus on being one people, one family, one nation, and one country, with a rich history that was built through the efforts of our hard-working forefathers. If our goal is to establish a better Bahamas, forward, upward, onward together, to one common loftier goal. Lift up your heads, Bahamaland, rise, speak, and fight for a new country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Fox Hill, thank you very much for your contribution. As many. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Beach. May you please take a seat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I would like to first and foremost express how grateful I am to represent the energetic, motivated, and innovative citizens of South Beach, and also the youth of this nation in this historic session of Youth in Parliament. Mr. Bramford McCartney once said, "Now is certainly not the time to huddle around the shadows of our homes, around the water coolers, on the telephone lines of radio talk shows, in our comfort zones, to complain and point fingers to who should be blamed and ashamed for the current state of our beloved Bahama land. And truth be told, we're all to blame. We all carry an equal load for how we allowed the ship to be steered. But today, not tomorrow, is the time that we pick up from where our forefathers left off and fight for a country where our children are truly the beneficiaries of our good work. Tomorrow is indeed too late." End quote. The bridge to the future. I have to question, Mr. Speaker, are we not only as strong as our weakest link? How strong exactly is this bridge that we are embarking on? Seeing that there are children in the classrooms that are illiterate. There are mothers at home crying, hurting, struggling to get by financially day by day. There are young men in prison, rotting, uneducated, unprivileged, and treated unfairly by their family and society. How strong is this bridge we are embarking on? And does the journey really continue? Mr. Speaker, it is in my belief and the belief of my constituents that no one is left behind. Before we embark on any journey, we will go back for those who are lost, and we will find those who are hurting, and we will give those who have no voice a voice so that they can be heard. Today, I stand as a voice, but it is my dream that every young person in the Bahamas has a true voice, not just a commercial voice, not just a voice for pretty, not just a voice that is used as a political ploy, but a voice that matters, a voice that means something in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, as I take my seat, I ask each and every one of you to think exactly how strong this bridge is. And are you willing to go back for those who are lost, for those who are hurt, for those who are struggling, or are you going to continue your journey by yourself? I believe in the Bahamian people because I believe in Bahamian resilience. I believe that no man shall be left behind. We can do it. We can make it. 40 years from now, we will be victorious. And I look forward to the day that I will say, "Happy Independence, Bahamas," instead of "Happy being independent." Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for South Beach, thank you very much for your contribution. As many. Honorable Member, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Yamacraw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before my speech, I really would like to point out a point of information.
You may proceed.
This is meant for the member of Cat Island. The Minister of Youth did not delay the policy's presentation to the Cabinet. The decision to delay was made by the Bahamas National Youth Policy Team because they did not debate. They did not want the debate for the policy to get lost in the gambling referendum. Thank you. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, I rise on behalf of the remarkable people of the Yamacraw constituency, and I humbly give them my gratitude for allowing me the opportunity to speak in this great house. I propose that we promote total youth development, a revitalized educational system, and then use this education to build our industries. We have just celebrated our 40th independence. I watched as hundreds of my peers participated in the independence celebrations. At that moment, I felt proud to be a young Bahamian looking forward to the next 40 years to come. However, as I was leaving the park, the pride which was once bursting in my heart and soul immediately transformed into hurt and disappointment. There were twice the amount of youth hanging around food stalls than the actual participants, as they were idle and seemingly unaware of the great milestone we had just passed. As a representative for the Yamacraw constituency, I believe that there should be more programs in place which cater to the diverse interests in our country. Not everyone likes to hike, camp, or sell pins and cookies. Maybe not everyone is interested in marching bands or instruments for that matter. Perhaps if we had more programs that catered specifically to our talents, gifts, and interests, we can develop them more positively. Mr. Speaker, I submit to you that a lot of young people are not even aware of the vast amount of programs in place, such as the Self-Start Program, Fresh Start Program, GGYA, and JA. I now ask, Mr. Speaker, what is the meaning of the word youth in Parliament? Empowerment, rather. Youth empowerment can be described as supporting and giving young persons the ability, tools, and the environment to make logical and intelligent decisions by themselves. When you really look at our Bahamian society today, would you really label our youth as empowered to make logical and intelligent decisions by themselves? As the old saying goes, idle hands are the devil's workshop. More youth programs, Mr. Speaker, will ultimately give older citizens the chance to positively influence the lives of young Bahamians, molding us into able-minded citizens. I now move on to my second and third points, which I found to interconnect. When we, the youth, hear the word education, we normally get complacent. I've heard my peers ask repeatedly, when will we use this in life? Nevertheless, looking past normal rebellion, I began to question this myself. We, the young people of the Yamacraw constituency, believe that there should be an implementation of meaningful vocational electives in all schools. Not everyone can excel in physics, chemistry, or accounts. Through a recent survey of 25 young people on Facebook, 100% of respondents said that they would love to incorporate job and career training in all educational curriculums, proving that many would rather start their career training in high school, including the technical vocational fields, and then being assessed on what they're most passionate about. I acknowledge the fact that there are presently schools such as Aquinas, C.B. Bethel, C.R. Walker that offer these programs, including the magnet program. However, the magnet program is only offered at a limited amount of high schools. Each school in the Bahamas should be affording its students the same opportunity, which is to begin their career training in high school. The point I'm trying to illustrate to you, Mr. Speaker, is that many do not desire to attend college. But by implementing this program in all schools, it allows students to at least graduate with trades such as carpentry, cosmetology, auto mechanics, and electrical engineering, ultimately becoming employable citizens of this country. In fact, I challenge our leaders to give out more vocational tertiary scholarships, which can encourage young Bahamians to pursue their natural dexterity. This training can lead to the development of industries that can benefit our country. This allows young Bahamians to pursue loftier goals like being adequately trained in hospitality, obtaining supervisor and manager positions. Even so, let us move past tourism and start to develop other industries like livestock, farming, fishing, agriculture, straw weaving, textile, computer programming, and shipping industries. Let us take computer programming, for instance. We are in a technological age where the advancement in technology is almost vital for survival. We need to train ourselves and start developing software and application that is not only relevant to Bahamians, but to humans as a whole. I ask Bahamians to please open their minds to the thought that Bahamians were not only made to serve the world, but to be bound by tourism and minimum wage jobs. We are meant to be leaders. As the director of youth, Mr. Darren Turnquest, once said, we are not the youth of the future, we are the youth of the now. So let us start preparing for tomorrow when our journey can start today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Yamacraw, thank you very much for your contribution. You may proceed.
Further clarify the points made by the Honorable Member for Cat Island in regards to the tabling of the National Youth Policy. The Minister has done all that he can thus far. However, it was the decision of the National Youth Policy team to delay the tabling of the document within Cabinet and the House in order to make the necessary changes by the stakeholders to the document. So it is as comprehensive as it can be and needs in order to include every aspect of the youth. Thank you.
This debate has concluded. The Honorable Member for North Africa will now give closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have taken it that everyone has completed their respective speeches. I will now take pleasure in concluding this debate. Indeed, in our society, we have great youth who have great potential. Yet they are not recognized but ignored. Many of our youth lack the proper ability and training and recognition needed, and as a result, they began to become neglected and turn a different path that has now become detrimental towards our country's development. Problems such as illiteracy, unemployment, crime, and substance abuse are just a few things that have contributed to our decline. In addition, because they lack knowledge of our Bahamian history, our youth, as the representative of South Andros said, our youth have lost pride not only for themselves, but for many others. Mr. Speaker, this is because the young people do not know who they are, whose they are, and where they came from. According to the Department of Statistics, 30.7% of our youth are unemployed, 71% of men in prison are between the ages of 18 and 35, 40% of high school students are exposed to marijuana, and 1/3 of them become chronic addicts. Mr. Speaker, I must announce that the statistics and negative reports represent the minority, but we, the fellow parliamentarians here in this chamber today, represent the majority. Mr. Speaker, where there is a problem, there is always a solution. Through the implementation of the National Youth Policy and National Civics Curriculum, we can educate and empower our youth with the necessary skills that they need to carry this nation through the next 40 years. In addition, they will not only be able to compete on a local level, but also on a global scale. But as the representative for Kalani said, we must think globally and act locally. We must include our youth in the decision-making process. We must reconstruct the family structure in our society. We must install a civics museum to ensure that the contributions each and every one of our national heroes are not forgotten, but is known for many generations to come. Mr. Speaker, as the journey continues, we must ensure that every youth across the archipelago of the Bahamas has equal rights and opportunities in every area that is available. We must raise the standard of our living and not depend so heavily upon foreigners or any job that pays $150 a week. We must not only depend on one industry for our survival, but we must also invest in other industries such as agriculture. The Bahamas is a great nation full of great people. As the bridge to the future and as the journey continues, through the enactment of the National Youth Policy and investment in the youth, we as a nation can look forward to a better future. Thank you.
Honorable Member for North Abaco, thank you for your contribution. Before we adjourn, I would like to make a final call for motions. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a motion for all of the speeches and material presented here today to be bounded together with a letter addressed to the Minister so that our contribution may be presented to the Bahamian government.
Is there a seconder? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Golden Isles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion to comply the speeches and materials to be bounded together along with the letter addressed to the Minister that our contributions be presented to the government of the Bahamas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It has been agreed. Honorable members, the question is that the following resolution be agreed. Whereas the Bahamas gained its independence on July 10, 1973, and whereas on July 10, 2013, the island of the Bahamas celebrated the 40th anniversary of its independence, and whereas the date marked the anniversary of the raising of the black, gold, and aquamarine Bahamian national flag, and whereas the 40 years of independence led successfully by Prime Ministers Lyndon O. Pinling, Hubert A. Ingram, and Perry G. Christie were marked by strong economic growth, improvements in infrastructure, universal education, and national development. And whereas through challenging times of social inequality and economic disparity, the Bahamian people remained united together in one love and service. And whereas the Bahamian people in this time of celebration of the 40th anniversary of independence reflect on the proud history, achievements, and struggles fought and won by our forefathers. And whereas Bahamian influence can be felt around the world through culture, industry, athletics, and sport, academia, and cuisine. And whereas we, the Bahamian youth, will take this opportunity to reflect on the journey that led to independence 40 years ago, pay homage to the people who played an important role in securing Bahamian independence, and look forward to the progress of this generation for an even better future. And whereas this special session of the National Youth Parliament of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is being held to recognize the significance of the 40th anniversary of the independence, and the role we as young people will play in becoming the bridge to the future as the journey continues. Now therefore be it resolved that the Bahamas, while acknowledging the significant strides towards youth development over the past 40 years, recognizes that there is much work to be done through the implementation and enactment of a national youth policy for the Bahamas, as the government's legally binding commitment towards youth development. That the Bahamas must recognize young people as its greatest human asset and engage them in meaningful ways at all levels of the decision-making process, and protect their contributions through the implementation of legislation for a National Youth Commission, a National Youth Development Trust, a National Center for Youth Development, and that the historic contributions of our national heroes be incorporated into our education system through the implementation of a mandatory national Bahamian civics curriculum, so that as to make certain that the history of great Bahamians, heroes, and the functions of our government are never forgotten or become unknown to the next generation. As many as are in favor that the resolution be agreed will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The resolution has been agreed. Honorable members, let me bring to your attention prior to our adjournment that we, the members, and your constituents are invited to attend the Youth Band Encounter on Sunday at 5 p.m. on Clifford Park. As we have been talking about youth development, let us show up in large numbers to support our youth on Sunday. This debate has concluded. The House is adjourned.
Hey, I thought y'all did y'all were excellent, excellent.
Taking a load off, smiling as he said that the business of the House, this House, Youth Parliament, has been concluded and hereby adjourned. This is the 14th edition of Youth Parliament, 40th anniversary edition. We heard this morning during the reenactment of the opening of Parliament here in Parliament Square, we heard from Camille Mins, the Junior Governor General, a speech that was responded to, as you just heard. All of that concluded today. Again, the Speaker, Keith Roy, members speaking to issues affecting not only the country but of course the youth as well. And we're going to try to get Keith Roy as the Speaker, and also Camille Mins, the Junior Governor General, to speak to us before they take a visit to the Governor General, His Excellency Sir Arthur Folkes and Lady Folkes, Mount Fitzwilliam, for a repast which begins at 6 o'clock this evening. Issues, education, curriculum, new curriculum in schools, civics in that curriculum, family values, all of those issues addressed by the various parliamentary representatives today. And of course, one of the hot button issues, illegal immigration. The member for South Eleuthera making a strong presentation, as they all were pretty much. The Director of Youth, Darren Turnquest, pointing out that in his view, all of the presentations were strong presentations and quite substantive, as if all of the members, as we expected they would, all of those in the chamber today actually took some time to prepare their presentations. They took care to prepare their presentations before they came to the House. Today, wrapping up, Kirkland McIntosh from North Abaco. Actually, he was also the first presenter. Some of the points he raised, that the potential, the youth potential, is not always recognized, and that despite the negative reports and negative aspects of youth behavior, a lot more positive behavior is evident in our country, and some of that is represented and exemplified by what happened in the House these last 6 hours today. Also, he pointed out, again, some of those points raised by other presenters today, that youth must be included in some of the decisions that are made that will affect the youth, those who will be charged with running this country in the future. And again, talking about civics in the curriculum of all schools, that young Bahamians really know about their country, and some of the people we would consider or should consider our national heroes. Again, some very interesting presentations. He quoted one of his colleagues in the House, the member who represented Kalani. I think his name was Nicholas Knowles, talking about thinking globally and acting locally. And of course, presentation from Charlton Stanton. He represented Mount Moriah, and he's visually impaired. He talked about the importance of trying to put a dent in that food bill that we have and paying attention to those who are not necessarily academically inclined. As he said, because you're not academically inclined, you should not be consigned to pumping gas for the rest of your life. As I promised you as I begin this rap here in Parliament Square, that I was going to attempt to speak briefly with the Junior Governor General, Camille Mins, find out from her what it was like to deliver that speech from the throne this morning, and whether she thinks that the members in the chamber today were able to speak adequately and effectively to her speech from the throne. And so we are going to ask Camille Mins to come on over and talk to us. Camille Mins, the St. John's College student. How are you doing today?
Good day, Mr. Newell. I'm doing exceptionally well.
Exceptionally well. Let me ask you, what was it like presenting your speech this morning? What was it like sitting out there?
It felt unreal. It was a rare opportunity, and I felt as though I had to make it right because I would be speaking as the youth representative for the Governor General, and I would have to play the role of His Excellency Sir Arthur Folks very properly. I felt honored, and I felt privileged.
You, I understand, were given some of the information, a lot of the information you used in your presentation, but you were responsible and you actually put that presentation together yourself. You think you did you made a good effort?
I'd say I did. When I do something, I feel that I have to do it very well or not at all. And since I was given the opportunity to act as the Junior Governor General, I felt that when I write the speech, I have to write it perfectly.
Was there anything that you thought was more important than the other that people should have addressed during your presentation, or all of it? And did you think that your colleagues in Parliament effectively addressed that presentation that you made this morning?
I do believe that all aspects of the national youth agenda that they addressed was very important. The youth policy, the youth institutions, youth and education, and the sub-points that they mentioned, whether it was environment, immigration, or education. I felt everything was important and everything was presented very well.
Do you think at some point in the future you would like to have a life in politics?
I didn't really go into that role, but I never really thought about going into politics, but maybe. Never know.
You never know. What is Camille Mins going to do with herself? You didn't think about politics, but what do you want to do?
I will graduate from St. John's College in 2014, and afterwards I will attend the College of the Bahamas. I hope to pursue a career in marketing with experience in investment banking, and I will become an entrepreneur.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and good luck to you in all that you do.
Thank you so much. And before I leave, I'd like to thank everyone that has brought me here. I'd first like to thank my mother, Gita Mins, and my father, Marvin. I'd like to thank all of my family, my aunts, my grandparents, my uncles, my cousins, everyone, and also the Ministry of Youth and the Director of Youth, Mr. Turnquest. I'd like to thank my principal as well, and my school, and my classmates.
Thank you very much, Camille Mins. And you good start with that marketing. You're thanking everyone. They'll be happy for you. Charlton Stanton. He represented Mount Moriah in the chamber today. And so I'm going to take you right here with me. Charlton, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Stanton, sir.
Stanton, tell me, what was it like making that presentation today in the chamber?
It was really an invaluable experience to be in the House of Assembly where so many great politicians over the years have sat, and it was really a great opportunity for me, as well as the other youth parliamentarians today, to voice their opinions on the changes that need to be made, and it's really a great experience for all of us, including myself.
And I know that you spoke about agriculture and some other things. What would you like to see happen as a result of your presentation and the presentations of all your other colleagues today in this House of Assembly? What would you like to see happen?
I'd like to see all of the contributions that were made by our members at least be heard by the current members of Parliament. I believe that our culture in particular is an industry that definitely needs to be focused on as we move on and progress as a nation. I feel that issues such as that, immigration, all very important, technology as we progress, all of these need to be heeded in the decisions made by government.
Would be a challenge, of course. It would be quite interesting if you decided you wanted to go into politics. What are you going to do?
Right now, my focus is on accounting, but I'm not closing any doors. If that opportunity is provided for me, and if I continue on this path, then certainly it'd be great experience for me, and I'd love to represent the Bahamian people and make them proud.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and good luck in all that you do.
And I'd like to say one more thing.
Go ahead.
I'd like to thank all of those in Parliament that made this event possible. I'd like to thank all that came out today in support of us, youth. I'd like to say how proud I am of all the youth parliamentarians. And I'd like to say hi to all my Kingsway Academy persons representing, 014. And so it's a pleasure, and I'd like to reiterate the fact that youth are not the future. We are the present. This is our generation. This is our time to make changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If he does decide at some point to get into politics, watch out. He will be somebody to be reckoned with. And now, Keith Roy, he was the Speaker of the House of Assembly today. Keith, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and you?
I'm doing very well. You were the Speaker. As the acting Prime Minister said, you were in charge today. You were in charge of the chamber. What was it like being in charge of all of your colleagues and giving them instructions?
Well, first of all, like I say, it was a privilege to be in the position that I was in. Secondly, I would like to say that it was not easy. Being in a position where you have to acknowledge everyone in a fair manner. You cannot be biased. You have to also make sure that the rules and regulations of the House is in order. And all of those things made it difficult as time was going. So being in that position made me realize how leadership is. It is no friends in leadership. You must follow the rules, and I did it to the T.
And that is not always easy sitting in that chair if you want to lead. Your colleagues they didn't give you a hard time, did they?
No, they didn't.
Okay, you gonna look at politics at some point in the future, or this was just an exercise for you?
Well, I could definitely see myself being engaged in politics in the future. Probably not near future, but after I get myself established in my career. But I definitely see myself in politics in the future.
What do you want to do in terms of a career?
But currently, I am based at Florida Memorial University, where I'm studying computer engineering with a minor in math. And I intend to become a computer engineer. And from there, I will obtain my master's in both my master's in business administration and computer engineering with concentration. From there, I will work for a company, probably Apple or Google, and then from there, I will want to start my own business, software development, where I will be at the tip of the advancement of technology.
You, of course, plan at some point to come back to the Bahamas.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And tell me, before I let you go, because I know you all have to go and visit with the Governor General, Sir Arthur, folks, grade your colleagues in their presentations today. What did you think of the presentations in the House today?
They all got an A+. Some persons, they actually wowed me when I was sitting up there because, we were actually practicing for a long period of time, and I wasn't able to establish relationships on a friendship level with everyone. So persons who I thought that were quiet and timid, they actually were the ones that actually brought the fire in the House of Assembly. So it was an A+ grade.
Which means looks are sometimes deceiving, right?
Looks are very sometimes deceiving, sir.
Thank you very much, Keith Roy, and all success in what you do.
Okay. And one last thing, I'd like to give a thanks to, firstly, God. Secondly, my mom and dad, Keith Roy Sr. and Shawnette Roy. I'll also give thanks to my family and friends, also my teachers who have helped me to build the confidence in order to speak publicly. Miss Roll and Miss Virgil, they all were teachers of Anator Rogers High School. I'd also like to give thank you to I'll actually also want to give thanks to Mr. Tyrone and Miss Hill because they've been pivotal in my life, bringing me here even after high school graduation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, and good luck in all that you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Patsy Miller, we're going to talk to you before you leave. We want you to come on, take a bow. You happy with the way the director seemed to be happy? You were in the midst of it. Were you happy with the way it turned out today?
Yes, I'm definitely happy. I am proud of all the participants here today. Hard work definitely pays off, and many of the young people, they rose to the occasion. And, you know, this was the first time we actually had the opening of Parliament. And, of course, everyone would agree with me that our Governor General did an excellent job. So did the Speaker and all the participants. So I'm definitely proud. And I'm sure that you all will agree with me that the Bahamas is definitely in good hands.
Now, let me ask you this. I'm going to put you on the spot before you leave now. This last question before we wrap this up. How soon now before you get one of your people out of the youth parliament into the real parliament of the Bahamas? How soon? Give me a prediction.
Okay, well, we're working on that. So each 5 years, we're getting a bit closer. So I'm still hopeful.
You're still hopeful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Patsy Miller. Thank you very much. Okay, that's it here. And the director of youth is just walking in. And so I want you to come over here. We want to get you all in here.
Wonderful.
Darren Turnquist, how you doing? Are you happy with the way it turned out today?
I'm ecstatic. I'm lost for words, to say the least. I thought today went...
And that is unusual.
Yeah, that is unusual. But I thought that these young people did well. They demonstrated truly what our young people can do in this country. And this is one of our two events. Of course, you know that on Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m., we're going to have the youth bands that's going to really take Clifford Park by storm. And so beyond this, the youth parliamentarians will be there. So those who have been watching and want to see them, you can come and see them on Clifford Park at Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m. as the youth bands and the youth parliamentarians really put on a display for us.
Okay, great stuff. And let me tell you while I'm talking to you, we're going to put this together and clean it up and do what we need to and rebroadcast this entire session so you can tell the parliamentarians as well as their family and friends. We're going to put it together so that you can do it. You can see the morning session, 8 o'clock on Tuesday evening, and the afternoon session at 8 o'clock on Wednesday.
Wonderful. And I just want to say I really thank the Broadcasting Corporation for what they've done for us today. Truly, you all have put young people in the mainstream today, and we are grateful. These guys were out here 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and that speaks mountains for what we can do when we really take our youth in hand and really, you know, showcase them. And so hopefully the world sees and the nation sees that the journey, in fact, continues.
The journey continues. Thank you very much. Director of Youth Darren Turnquist, as we wrap it up here from Parliament Square. Youth in Parliament 2013, the 40th anniversary edition. This is the 14th time that youth have gathered here in Parliament. And from the sounds of it all, everybody who's been involved in organizing the event, beginning with the Chief Clerk, of course, the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture. We just heard from the Director and, of course, the Coordinator, Patsy Miller. They're all happy with the way this day turned out. And so, on behalf of the entire team here at Parliament, we're going to wait and see. As Patsy Miller says, they keep working on it, and every 5 years they'll see how soon they can actually get one of these members into the actual House of Assembly. On behalf of the entire team here at the Parliamentary Channel, I'm Anthony Newbold. Have a great afternoon, great evening, and we will see you back here on August the 7th for the resumption of debate on stem cell research and therapy.